The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people...
Hey everyone, it's Alexandra, and this is the first video in a series called Mind Game. I'm calling it that because this world we're born into is a battle, a game, for our minds and our souls. This is a three-part series. The first topic we'll be discussing is the common thread throughout all religions and philosophies: the light. We're going to uncover what's been hidden and how this light is being used to deceive the entire world. Before we get started, I want to give a little intro and a disclaimer. If you're new, please click around to understand what my channel is all about. Check out the About page for more info. I also recommend my documentary, An Inconvenient History, before watching the series because I'm going to be building on those concepts and my opinions of how everything there is connected. I apologize that I have to censor what I say, so if I use a weird term, I try to put the real word on the screen just to try to bypass censorship. And I have left links to anything that I reference in the description box below. I hope this series will help you connect some pieces in your own research. I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea. I don't see myself as any kind of a truther channel, or any kind of a teacher. This is just me and my research and my opinions. While I feel led to uncovering some hidden aspects of our world in an attempt to pull people out of it, it can be difficult to do this kind of research. That's why I don't post too often. It is more important to focus on the Word of God and learn about Him, which is why I also don't make videos about things that I think you can find information about in various different places. I want to try to share some things that are maybe a little bit harder to find or put together and things like that, because we can't ignore our reality or be ignorant of our enemy's devices. We have to be prepared in all ways, just as the Bible tells us. So for now, I feel like that's where God is using me at the moment. So just remember going into this series to make sure that you've got a solid relationship with God and that you spend more time learning about Him than you do worrying about our enemy's deceptions. After all, God is the truth and He is the best weapon against lies. By no means is this an exhaustive study. I'm just going to be touching on topics that you can research later for yourself if you're interested. And I can't address every angle or perspective of a topic. We would be here all day. My friend said, if you can't see the true evil of this world, you won't notice the true God, or perhaps even God at all. The depths of darkness and corruption and how it's all connected give even more weight and power to the truth of God. In this video series, I'm going to use the mainstream names of God and Jesus to avoid confusion, but I'm not going to judge anyone on what they choose to call Abba the Father. 2 Corinthians 10:4-5. For the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but have divine power to destroy strongholds. We destroy arguments and every lofty opinion raised against the knowledge of God, and take every thought captive to obey Christ. Let's get started. A common expectation before Christ will return is that there must be a one-world religion. Many are dreading the day that it arrives, but what if it's already here? That is what we will theorize and think about today. I think putting a coming one-world religion into the future gives us a false sense of security. If there's no one-world religion, the world must be okay. Jesus won't return before then. But do you think the world is okay? Has the world been okay? Well, you don't need me to tell you that the world right now, it isn't good. It hasn't been good. I think the entire traumatic ritual we've been put through is a good indication that something is seriously wrong. Do I believe there will someday be a newfound one-world religion everyone on earth must follow, or else? I do not. But anything can happen, and if that day comes, alright, we'll be ready. Just keep watching. But we're going to talk about an alternative theory, that we already have a one-world religion. Religions generate extraordinary revenue. They're some of the main pillars of mind control, on a mass scale as well as ritualistically, and they work via monopolies. A monopoly is established when you find a product that everyone wants or needs. Then, you eliminate all the competition by either destroying them or owning the competition yourself. The elite's products are religions, and they own them all. God is not a religion. He is so much bigger than that. He is the truth, What we're talking about today are the top-level individuals and groups in charge of the religious organizations, and how they all share a common religion, not of the truth, but of Luciferianism, passed down through millennia. I'm not talking about the parishioners in churches, mosques, or temples. I'm talking about the teachers who taught today's teachers. Assuming someday a world religion will be demanded and everyone will have to worship Lucifer is actually making the extraordinary assumption that the world religions we have today are not already worshiping Lucifer. What do you do when you've assembled an army? You go to war. The war is to fight God and win. Lucifer has his army, worshipped through countless veins of religion, philosophies, thoughts, and actions. Not to mention governments, programmed slaves, cults, organizations, banks, and many more. Worldwide enterprises of sophisticated networks have been trafficking drugs, weapons, and humans for centuries. They all work together and don't let exoteric facades of religions get in their way of their allegiance to Lucifer. In this first video, I'm going to talk about how all religions, at their very core, worship the light, and how all of them are Luciferian. There is so much noise, there's so much junk distracting from the logical progression or core of organized and non-organized religions. Religions are not so complicated. There are many religions, many ideas, many gods. But it's actually quite simple when you trace them all back to their origin.
For at least thousands of years, people practiced the religion of the sun right across the earth. The evidence for this once great global religion can be found in the most ancient sites, sacred texts and legends in the world. In fact, the practice of the religion of the sun traces back so far that its origins vanish into the mists of time, where legends become so old they become a thing of myth, magic and other worlds. This practice can be found alongside the accounts of giants, lost civilizations like Atlantis, times of divine kings, magical objects, and huge cycles of time in which human societies evolve, devolve, and experience periodic catastrophe.
Where did the modern civilizations get their gods? History books force you into thinking the first civilization was Sumeria. But where did the Sumerians get their gods? Nicholas DeVere, author of The Dragon Legacy, says, regarding the Hindu religion, for example, its pantheon of gods were virtually identical to the Sumerian, Egyptian, Hittite, Irish, Gaulish, Danish, and Greek. Then, he says, given the evidence to date, we can confidently say that Tantra and the Kabbalah are descended from ancient Ubaid Druidic philosophy. Ubaid was a culture that lived in Mesopotamia from 5500 BC to 4000 BC. Archaeologists disagree on the exact date when Sumeria began, but most now agree that the Ubaid people were there first. The Sumerians appeared first in Mesopotamia in 3500 BC. Prior to their emergence, they were preceded by the Ubaid migrants from what is now southern Romania, from Carpathia and Scythia, who had fled south to escape the Black Sea flood of 4000 BC. Dated to about 5000 BC, archaeologists working in Tartaria in the Ubaid territory of Transylvania discovered a tepes, or a rath, under which they found a fire pit. And the Sumerian inhabited the same geographical region of Mesopotamia from 4100 to 1750 BC. By the time Moses wrote the first 5 books of the Bible, the land where the Sumerians lived was called the land of Shinar. But again, the Sumerians were not the first ones there. After the flood, Genesis 10 records all of the sons born to Noah's sons. Ham was the father of Cush, and Cush fathered Nimrod. He was the first on earth to be a mighty man, or a giant. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore, it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. Beginning of his kingdom was Babel, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh, in the land of Shinar. So the first ruler of Ubaid and Sumeria, the land of Shinar, was Nimrod. Nimrod was the first world leader and built the Tower of Babel in an effort to reach heaven and destroy God. Nimrod is known by many names in different countries. This may have happened after God confused the languages at the Tower of Babel. Nimrod's brother was Canaan, and he fathered Sidon, his firstborn, and Heth, and the Jebusites and Amorites and Girgashites, the Hivites, the Arkites, the Sinites, the Arvadites, the Zemarites, the Hemathites. Afterward, the clans of the Canaanites dispersed. Many of these clans were giants, and they lived in and around Israel at the time. After leading the Israelites out of Egypt, God commanded them several times to destroy the tribes that were in the promised land, Israel. Deuteronomy 20:16-18 says, "But in the cities of these people that the Lord your God is giving you for your inheritance, you shall save alive nothing that breathes. But you shall devote them to complete destruction. The Hittites and the Amorites, the Canaanites and the Perizzites, the Hivites and the Jebusites, as the Lord your God has commanded, that they may not teach you to do according to all their abominable practices that they have done to their gods, and so you sin against the Lord your God. These verses are just a small sample of how God instructed the Israelites to destroy those so-called people. God knew that they were dangerous giants, or Nephilim, and he knew that they would continue to spread their false religion that led to death and eventually spread across the entire world. The Canaanites, Hivites, Assyrians, Phoenicians, etc. are the origins of the royal bloodlines we have today. Bloodlines are important because they believe generational entities are passed on through families that hold occulted information from one generation to the next, which is how they remain in power. Blood drinking is also an important practice to them in an attempt to gain enlightenment. All of those Nephilim tribes worshipped the sun, fire, the moon, or light. The Saturn theory proposes that Saturn was in the sky as the original sun, which would mean the most ancient form of sun worship was actually Saturn worship. God repeatedly calls out kings and priests for worshiping the stars. In 2 Kings 21:5, he's saying that King Manasseh built altars for all of the hosts of heaven in the two courts of the house of the Lord. And in 2 Kings 23:4-5, King Josiah had to deal with what the kings of Judah had allowed. And the king commanded Hilkiah, the high priest, and the priests of the second order, and the keepers of the threshold to bring out of the temple of the Lord all the vessels made for Baal, for Asherah, and for all the hosts of heaven. He burned them outside Jerusalem in the fields of Kidron, and carried their ashes to Bethel. And he deposed the priests whom the kings of Judah had ordained to make offerings in the high places of the cities of Judah and around Jerusalem, those also who burned incense to Baal, to the sun and the moon and the constellations and all the hosts of heaven. And finally, Deuteronomy 4:19, and beware not to lift up your eyes to heaven and see the sun and the moon and the stars, all the hosts of heaven, and be drawn away and worship them and serve them, those which the Lord your God has allotted to all the peoples under the whole heaven. Esoterically, they all worshipped the fallen and their knowledge. There's another line descended from Noah's son Japheth that I want to show you. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tiras. The sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, Rephath, and Togarmah. You may recognize the highlighted names. Theosophist D.A. Holmes wrote an article, Celts and Druids. Who are they? One of the most colorful theories of the origins of the Celts traces their ancestry to Noah and his ark. In 1857, the Reverend R.W. Morgan had no doubt at all that the Qumri were descendants of Comer, or Gomer, the eldest son of Japheth, who was the eldest son of Noah. As explained in The Dragon Legacy, the Druids are associated with groves, and, as some will insist, with oak trees. However, it's feasible to suggest that in light of their Sumerian and Ubaid origins, the Druids, as priest-kings of the dragon, were connected specifically to the Tree of Life and the Tree of Knowledge, rather than any mundane or temporal shrubbery. Accepting this, we must further suggest that, as priests of these preeminent trees of life and knowledge, they may further be identified with those magicians and scholars whose Transylvanian descendants were the Scythian Aryans or Sumerian Anunnaki, the dragon god kings. They were instrumental in establishing the chakric system of Hindu and Buddhist Tantra and Hebrew, Arabic, and Greek Kabbalah, whose magical systems, as we all know, contain a glyph called the Tree of Life. What he's suggesting is that Druids are descendants of the Scythians who descended from Gomer, Japheth's son. The Scythians were a warlike, red-haired people who were excellent horsemen. The author of the website Dragon Labyrinth has compiled an extensive history of the Scythians. Further east of Transylvania, similar discoveries were made in the Ukraine or Greater Scythia, and the peoples who had settled there were named after their dwellings, which in Russian were called kurgans. They were mound houses exactly the same as the tepes of Tartaria, and the tells that the Ubaid built all the way down through Anatolia to Al-Ubaid and Sumeria. Then he calls them vampires, and says that they had a big influence on European culture. No, not the romanticized vampires of the late 1800s. They were occultist barbarians who drank the blood of their victims. This particularly in light of the discoveries of bat-winged serpent god statuary found in Dacia in Tibet, which is said to date back to at least 5,000 years, putting it into the period of the emergence of civilization in Sumeria. Such figures would readily identify as the dragon, or in Gaelic the Shumari, while the Kurgans tells Teps that these early Transylvanian or Scythian, Scythians, or Ubaid occupied were clearly duplicated in the Irish raths of the Danann, such as Newgrange and its spirally engraved stones, the ziggurats of the Sumerians, and the pyramids of the Egyptians. He mentions that the dragon in Gaelic is called Shumari. Other Gaelic meanings of Shumari are vampire, vortex, meaning whirlpool or spiral, a labyrinth, a reptile as in a serpent or a dragon. If anyone is familiar with the popular animated cartoon Naruto, you may recognize this symbol. Why? Well, Naruto's last name is Uzumaki, which is a pun on the Japanese word for a three-dimensional spiral, like a vortex or a whirlpool. These types of symbols are everywhere in cartoons, even some unexpected connections exist. For example, this sound. Could be any Japanese anime opening, right? Well, it's actually Hasidic music, which is very popular in Japan. Hasidism, also known as Hasidic Judaism, is a Jewish religious group that arose as a spiritual revival movement in the territory of contemporary Western Ukraine during the 18th century and spread rapidly throughout Eastern Europe. Hasidic Jays are mystics, and the teachings of Hasidism are an extension of the Kabbalistic writings. The world is more connected than disconnected. Even Japanese animation is filled with religious propaganda. One more reason to be extremely careful and vigilant if you still consume media. Catholic aesthetic features heavily in Japanese cartoons. Catholicism is a prominent example of sun worship or a Roman solar cult. There are countless sun gods like Mithras, Apollo, Helios, Ra, Sol Invictus, Amaterasu, the Celtic sun god Luch, all symbolizing enlightenment as they bring light to the world. Even so, all religions, organized or otherwise, worship the sun in one form or another. Remember, God is not part of any religion, God is the truth. Anyway, the Scythians lived in Eastern Europe, in what today is called Ukraine. According to the Internet Encyclopedia of Ukraine, Ziyism was born in Ukraine and flourished there despite Soviet persecution. The Ziyists are the elite, and many are Ashkenazi Jays. They are very likely descended from the Scythians, who descended from Japheth's son Ashkenaz. The Scythians were well known in Jesus' day. Colossians 3:1-11 says, "If then you have been raised with Christ, seek the things that are above, where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things that are above, not on things that are on earth. For you have died, and your life is hidden with Christ in God. When Christ, who is your life, appears, then you also will appear with him in glory. Put to death, therefore, what is earthly in you: sexual immorality, impurity, passion, evil desire, and covetousness, which is idolatry. On account of these, the wrath of God is coming. In these you too once walked, when you were living in them. But now you must put them all away: anger, wrath, malice, slander, and obscene talk from your mouth. Do not lie to one another, seeing that you have put off the old self, with its practices, and have put on your new self, which is being renewed in knowledge after the image of its creator." Here there is no Greek or Jay, circumcised or uncircumcised, barbarian, Scythian, slave, free, but Christ is all and in all. The Scythians were called out by name. Paul is saying that if they believed in Christ, they too would be born again. Many may have been saved, but knowing what we know today about the elite Ziyists, some continued in their old ways, pretending to be Ashkenazi Jays. Now, when we look at Revelation 3:9, Jesus' words are even more poignant. "Behold, I will make those of the synagogue of Satan, who say they are Jays and are not, but lie. Behold, I will make them come and bow down before your feet, and they will learn that I have loved you." The synagogue of Satan is today's occult ruling class, sometimes called the network, the establishment, or the elite. I see a whole world religion as much bigger than any one group of people or any religious ideology or any one country. It's called a one world religion for a reason. Every tribe and group would ultimately be worshipping the same thing: the light. It is a difficult truth to internalize when most hear that we, as humans, are not at the top of the food chain. We are prey. There are worldwide organized networks composed of those who prey upon humans for their blood, flesh, energy, adrenaline, CSF or cerebrospinal fluid, and their thoughts. Those who rule over us are essentially parasites. There are not innumerable amounts of different gods worshipped in different cultures. They have the same characters with different names. For example, Osiris is Asher, who was also Orion. In Norse mythology, Odin had given up an eye to, quote, drink of the water of truth. Does one-eyed symbolism to gain enlightenment sound familiar? The Antichrist parasites, or the high-level Luciferians who hate God, do have a one-world religion. Every leader of every nation, every mover and shaker, the ruling class, financial titans, every cult, and anyone who has control over others in this world belong to the same religion, practiced countless ways. An esoteric religion they all ascribe to and have distributed and promoted exoterically to the world that is so ingrained now that most don't even notice it. To define that real quick, esoteric means knowledge meant for and held by a select few with no intention of explaining it to the uninitiated, while exoteric means information commonly understood by the masses. The light is a prominent feature in the entertainment industry. The Lord of Light in Game of Thrones.
And you started letting the light in.
While the lead singer Jared Leto says the song is about conflict, This Is War by 30 Seconds to Mars' lyrics say, to the right, to the left, we will fight to the death. To the edge of the earth, it's a brave new world. I do believe in the light. Raise your hands up to the sky. The fight is done, the war is won. Lift your hands towards the sun. I mean, this should come as no surprise, but Leto is not talking about the God of the Bible. He is talking about the light of the false god, Lucifer, as we'll discuss more in the next part of this series. And of course the song Light is Coming by Ariana Grande from 2018 that says, the light is coming to give back everything the darkness stole. There are countless other examples, but you get the picture. When someone says religion, most people think Western exoteric Christianity. But I am talking about all world religions. Speaking of Western exoteric Christianity, I talked about compromised churches and doctrines at about the 56-minute mark in An Inconvenient History, and how the brother men infiltrated churches by the millions starting in the 1920s. That was 100 years ago, and they began promoting mystic Christianity. 2 Timothy 4:3 says, for the time is coming when people will not endure sound teaching, but have itching ears. They will accumulate for themselves teachers to suit their own passions. Look at the rise of megachurches and megapastors. Most of their doctrine is not biblical, but more focused on self-help and living your best life. I do believe in the Word of God, and Jesus is my Savior. God does not belong in any religion. God is the truth, and the truth has no agenda, dogma, hierarchy. It just is. You also cannot use a sweeping generalization and say, oh, all translations are corrupt, and there is no truth left in the Bible. That comes more from a spirit of doubt, searching for a reason not to believe. Or confirmation bias, looking for a reason not to believe. The original manuscripts are still intact, and yes, translation errors may occur, but it's best to investigate words and their meanings, context, and read various versions to understand the essence of Scripture. God is more powerful than any Luciferian group that has attempted to hide the truth. In the book The Secret Teachings of the Brothermanic Lodge by John Ankerberg and John Weldon, the Educational and Historical Commission of the Grand Lodge of Georgia said, let us take a look at the number of great Bible classes for men which have been organized by the Church. Many of these classes are being led by enlightened brothers. These laymen are bringing to the interpretation of the Bible many of Brother Manry's great revelations. Now, I do believe that there are some churches out there that do good, as in giving to the community and providing help for the homeless and things like that, but most are still pushing pagan holidays and false Catholic doctrines and brother men commentary. The rise of megachurches, super powerful celebrity pastors, and teaching mystic propaganda instead of the Word of God is mostly what I'm referring to in this video as well as all my others. However, it is unfortunate that so many have rejected God and His Son based on knowledge via osmosis, and the popular stereotypes around Western churchianity, or emotional and physical abuse at the hands of people claiming to know the Word of God. One example is the logical fallacy that because Christians are hypocritical, judgmental, and intolerant people, the Hebrew God must be these things too. That is false. This is applying human traits to a higher, infinite creator. The gods who are assigned human attributes are the fallen. Those beliefs tend to come from individuals who have not truthfully examined the character of God for themselves. Instead, they've agreed with the characterization of God by the very establishment who want them to reject God. I know this because I used to be a victim of this kind of conditioning when I was an atheist. They say, "Do not think for yourself. We have thought it out for you. And you will repeat what we tell you." Like that old meme, everybody hates Nickelback, so I will hate Nickelback too. Look at this photograph. When I said every religion, I am talking about every system of faith and worship across the world, such as Islam, Christianity, Hinduism, Jainism. This also includes those without a formal religious affiliation, such as atheism, paganism, and scientism, as well as all popular philosophies such as Confucianism, Buddhism, Taoism, among many others. If you are against one religion, be against them all, because ultimately, they're the same. At the esoteric core, every religion is Luciferian. The people, organizations, and cults who run the world, the ones who own the banks, the prisons, the media, the entertainment industry, food, transportation, clothing stores, and more, all have one religion, practiced slightly different ways, that they have passed down from generation to generation. This religion has been kept alive like the fire from a torch being passed from one Olympic runner to another. By the way, the lighting of the Olympic torch is an ancient Greek sun ritual. The elite hide behind commonly used titles like Zeist, Kabbalist, and even J, but when you take off the mask, take away the titles they hide behind, or pull the curtain back, these individuals are simply Luciferian. For example, members of the British royal family are Luciferian, even though they appear to be part of the Church of England. The Pope and his bishops and cardinals are also Luciferian, even though they belong to the Catholic religion. To these high-level occultists, religious affiliations mean little. They are just a facade to trick the world's uninformed masses. Fiona Barnett, an Australian satanic ritual and abuse survivor, testified before the International Tribunal for Natural Justice in London on September 7th of 2018. This is from her actual witness statement. I'll leave a link below if you want to read her entire statement. The Luciferian system is arranged according to a hierarchical structure which vaguely resembles a caste system. At the very top sit 13 family bloodlines, including the Rothschilds and the British royal family. These act as demigods. Below these sit approximately 300 Luciferian bloodlines, followed by everyone else inside the cult. Esoterically, Luciferians worship various ancient pagan gods, including Lucifer, Moloch, Baal, Dagon, Imhotep, Horus, Isis, Anubis, and Set. As Fiona says, the number one rule of Luciferianism is there's no such thing as Luciferianism. Ironically, there's nothing in our modern world that has escaped the claws of Luciferians. When you untangle all the threads of world religions and beliefs, they all go back to the same ball of yarn. God told us this is Lucifer's kingdom, the ruler of this world, and Paul calls him the prince of the power of the air, and the god of this world. John makes a further distinction when he says, "We know that we are of God, and the whole world is in the power of the evil one." Everything is Luciferian, or at the very least controlled by those who are. Everything in the media, movies, TV, music, government, corporate logos, and more. For example, the word Uber comes from the Scythian language and means vampire. Uber in German means above or over and is associated with superiority in power, position, and station to others. The Turkish word Uber means witch. There are hidden Mickeys in Disney World, and there are Luciferian stamps on everything in our daily world. While the truth is an opt-in system, Luciferianism is an opt-out system. You have the free will to accept the truth, but a lot of Luciferianism was ingrained into us against our will. That's why we have to work to deprogram, and the only one who can truly deprogram us and unite our minds again is the living God. Lucifer is not the creator of heaven or earth, but by deception and trauma, he can create his own version of reality, the Matrix, the mind game, where he is the God. The creator, the architect of reality. So the foundation of Luciferianism is the worship of the light. You can't have a war without an army. There is a spiritual war going on as well as a physical one. Occultists worldwide worship the light, either in the form of the sun, the dark sun, the moon, the spiritual sun, knowledge, and many more, and as a result, over 2 million mind-controlled slaves have been created by them. These occultists are Luciferian because they are Lucifers. They are enlightened. They are light bearers. Or so they think. In the occult, the light is viewed as the invisible force that guides an initiate to knowledge and higher consciousness. All religions or spiritual beliefs may differ in form and function, but they all are ultimately seeking the light. Luciferians adhere to every variety of personal spiritual beliefs, but believe that all paths lead to the same destiny. In other words, that many paths that follow the light lead to unity. Unlike the narrow path in Matthew 7:13-14, enter by the narrow gate. For the gate is wide and the way is easy that leads to destruction, and those who enter by it are many. For the gate is narrow and the way is hard that leads to life, and those who find it are few. The light is a replacement for God. Some occult groups would say, you call the light by a name, but it's the same thing. That is not true. Their light is a substitution for God. The origin of Luciferianism and all of the world's organized religions can be found through a mischaracterization of Genesis 1:3 by the mystery religions. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. God spoke, and light was created. Remember this, light is a creation, not a creator. According to various occultists, the phrase, let there be light, is the base for all mystery religions, and eventually all religions. The same phrase is echoed in the Popol Vuh of the Mayas. Light became synonymous with truth and knowledge. In the entered apprentice initiation of Brother Manry, the initiate is lost in darkness and seeking the light. Blindfolded, the initiate is led through the process of being reborn into the light. In the entered apprentice study guide, or the very first initiation into the craft, the question asked is, what do brother men seek? The answer is light. Light represents knowledge. All brother men continually seek more knowledge. The mischaracterization of let there be light is the origin of the pre-Diluvian mystery schools. Since they can't truly create anything, they latch onto the first created thing, the light, the order out of chaos, as it were. Brother man and worshipful master Albert Mackey, who was initiated, passed, and raised in 1841, wrote the book, The Symbolism of Brother Manry, where he explains what light means to brother men. Light was, in accordance with this old religious sentiment, the great object of attainment in all the ancient religious mysteries. It was there, as it is now, in Brother Manry made the symbol of truth and knowledge. This was always its ancient symbolism, and we must never lose sight of this emblematic meaning when we are considering the nature and signification of Brothermanic light. When the candidate makes a demand for light, it is not merely for that material light which is to remove a physical darkness. That is only the outward form which conceals the inward symbolism. Or, in other words, that is the exoteric form which conceals the esoteric symbolism. He craves an intellectual illumination, which will dispel the darkness of mental and moral ignorance, and bring to his view, as an eyewitness, the sublime truths of religion, philosophy, and science, which it is the great design of Brother Manry to teach. So according to Mackey, light became the symbol of truth and knowledge. Mackey also said, in all the ancient systems of initiation, the candidate was shrouded in darkness as a preparation for the reception of light. The duration varied in the different rites. In the Celtic mysteries of Druidism, the period in which the aspirant was immersed in darkness was 9 days and nights. Among the Greeks at Eleusis, it was 3 times as long. And in the still severer rites of Mithras in Persia, 50 days of darkness, solitude, and fasting were imposed upon the adventurous neophyte, who, by these excessive trials, was at length entitled to the full communication of the light of knowledge. Thus it will be perceived that the religious sentiment of a good and an evil principle gave to darkness in the ancient symbolism a place equally as prominent as that of light. The same religious sentiment of the ancients, modified, however, in its details by our better knowledge of divine things, has supplied Brother Manry with a double symbolism, that of light and darkness. Darkness is the symbol of initiation. It is intended to remind the candidate of his ignorance, which Brother Manry is to enlighten, of his evil nature, which Brother Manry is to purify, of the world in whose obscurity he has been wandering, and from which Brother Manry is to rescue him. The disturbing reality is that this type of ritual is commonly practiced in satanic ritual abuse of programming victims. Remember, the brothers perfected mesmerism or mind control, but it was around far before organized Brother Manry. Mind control is a Luciferian tradition stemming back thousands of years, with some of the oldest references being from Egypt. Another reference is that Golem were said to be mind-controlled slaves created by the magic of the Kabbalah. The Kabbalah, according to brothers, including Albert Pike in his famous Morals and Dogma book, is the basis of Brother Manry. By extension, then, It is clear that the goal of having a mind control golem or slave has been the goal of brothermanry in its many offshoots, because that goal is the best example of practical Kabbalah. The Monarch Project or programming is a miniaturized version of the psychological manipulation done on a mass scale, but programming has been around far before it was perfected with modern technology. Kabbalah is an ancient Jewish tradition of mystical interpretation of the Torah. It was first transmitted orally and uses magic and esoteric methods as a way to attempt to understand God. The most exoteric definition, the Kabbalah Tree of Life, is said to represent humans, namely the soul of a human. It's a map of the universe, and you, or the universe manifested within you. There are 10 spheres of the Tree of Life, and they're joined by 22 paths. The Kabbalistic tree is often used to build a mind-control victim's internal system structure using the Sphirot, or rooms, as file cabinets. The 22 cards of the tarot deck originated in Ireland, but also correspond to the paths in the Tree of Life.
The goal of the whole system is to unite the male and the female. Male and female appear in various places on this chart, but primarily the middle Sphira Tiferet is seen as masculine, and the last of the 10 Sphirot, Malchut, I'll refer to her as Shekhinah, her other name. Shekhinah means presence, Malchut means kingdom. So Malchut or Shekhinah is the feminine, Tiferet is the masculine. The goal of the system is to unite the masculine and the feminine.
In 2009, Saint Germain was channeled by New Ager Molly Rowland, saying the same thing.
I'm stepping into the role of world teacher for the Aquarian Age. The Aquarian Age, the age of divine androgyny. God, Goddess, all that is. The divine masculine and divine feminine blending and aligning with the God force.
Kabbalah, or sometimes called Kabbalah, is not a religion. It's a philosophy. Therefore, many different beliefs and religions use it. Kabbalah does not automatically assume the practitioner is Jewish. It assumes they are Luciferian.
You wear the Jewish star?
Well, I wear the Jewish star, but I haven't converted to Judaism, and I'm not Jewish in the conventional sense, because the Kabbalah is a belief system that predates religion and predates Judaism as an organized religion.
The God of this system is not the true creator God, but rather the light. This is a subtle but significant difference. Notice the 3 curved lines at the top, the En, Ensof, and Ensof R. All 3 of those relate to the fabric of consciousness. The Ensof R in particular can refer to light as in an expression of illumination, or it can refer to something more tangible, as in the Elohim making the sun and moon from light, Genesis 1:16, or the primordial light that was separated from the primordial darkness. In other words, another mischaracterization of Genesis to insinuate Lucifer has a more elevated position than Jesus. The Kabbalah is not exclusive to Jewish mysticism. It can be found in countless cultures across the world and predates organized religion. Many groups practice Kabbalah but do not identify in any way with the Jewish religion. The light is a very prominent part of that system. The system of false enlightenment is the basis for the occult organizations of today. The Kabbalah and the Zohar of the Zionist Jays are fundamental books of most occult magic and satanic groups in which they base their activities on. The magician Eliphas Levi wrote in his book Transcendental Magic, quote, "All truly dogmatic religions have issued from the Kabbalah and returned therein. Whatsoever is grand or scientific in the religious dreams of the illuminated, of Jacob Bohm Swedenborg, St. Martin, and the rest, is borrowed from the Kabbalah. All brothermanic associations owe to it their secrets and their symbols." I can't see how Kabbalah is compatible with the truth. In my opinion, I think the research shows that the Ensof corresponds not to God, but to Lucifer. Asur is seen floating above the Assyrian version of the Tree of Life. This corresponds to Ensof. Osiris corresponds to Asur, which corresponds to Marduk of Babylon. Marduk is Baal or Moloch. The Theosophists or the Neo-Babylonians postulate that the god of scripture is Baal, but Baal is the god of war and weather. His symbols are lightning bolts and bullhorns. He corresponds with Nimrod, Pan, Zeus, Jupiter, Ashur, Kronos, and Marduk. Baal is a Babylonian sun deity. This sun worship, or the worship taking form as the spiritual sun and the full moon. These characters in no way represent God. They represent Lucifer. God condemns the worship of Baal and other false idols. Judges 2:13 says, "And they forsook the Lord and served Baal and Ashtaroth, being representations of deities, sun and moon worship." It should also be clear how the God of the Scripture has nothing to do with the Luciferian doctrines, such as the Kabbalah, which prove the God of Luciferianism is Baal, which prove that their light is the sun, the worship of the light, the rebel angel whose vendetta with God continues to this day, Lucifer. Helena Blavatsky wrote in her book The Secret Doctrine in Volume 2, page 132, quote, "Once the key to Genesis is in our hands, the scientific and symbolical Kabbalah unveils the secret. The great serpent of the Garden of Eden and the, quote, Lord God are identical." It was her belief that Lucifer was the savior of mankind, and that the God of the Bible was the adversary of man, and felt that the name Satan described God better than Lucifer. She is insinuating the secret of the Kabbalah is that Lucifer is God. Blavatsky and the Theosophical Society see those believing in Scripture as, quote, fighting against divine truth, when repudiating and slandering the dragon of esoteric divine wisdom. The ones believing in the true God of the Scripture are, in her words, fighting against divine truth. The God of the Kabbalah is not the God of the Scriptures. Where secret societies take knowledge and hide it or occult it for themselves, God does the opposite. Matthew 7:7-8 says, "Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and it will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives, and the one who seeks finds, and to the one who knocks it will be opened." To receive light, or wisdom in the occult, an initiation is required. And even then, the secret information is only given to the higher-ranking members. Continuing with Albert Mackey's description of light and initiation. Quote, "Light, on the other hand, is the symbol of the autopsy, the sight of the mysteries, the entrusting the full fruition of brothermanic truth and knowledge. Initiation precedes the communication of knowledge in brothermanry, as darkness preceded light in the old cosmogonies. Thus, in Genesis, we see that in the beginning, the world was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. The Chaldean cosmogony taught that in the beginning, all was darkness and water. The Phoenicians supposed that the beginning of all things was a wind of black air and a chaos dark as Erebus. But out of all this darkness sprang forth light, and the divine command and the sublime phrase, 'Let there be light,' is repeated, in some substantially identical form, in all the ancient histories of creation. So, too, out of the mysterious darkness of brothermanry comes the full blaze of brothermanic light. One must precede the other as the evening preceded the morning. So the evening and the morning were the first day. This thought is preserved in the great motto of the order, Lux e Tenebris, light out of darkness. Light is therefore a fundamental symbol in brothermanry. It is, in fact, the first important symbol that is presented to the neophyte, or someone who's new, in his instructions, and contains within itself the very essence of speculative brothermanry, which is nothing more than the contemplation of intellectual light or truth. I said this in my video, The Cult of Kek, but it's worth repeating. The book, The Spirit of Brothermanry, says, "They guide the candidate until he has gained the right to stand in the East before the presence, and there, before the brethren, prove himself initiate. They assist at the unfolding of the consciousness of the candidate until the time comes when he can enter into light, and in his turn become a light bearer, one of the Illuminati who can assist the Lodge on high in bringing humanity to light." Ezekiel was shown what appears to be a model for brothermen meetings. Ezekiel 8:15-16 says, "Then he said to me, 'Have you seen this, O son of man? You will still see greater abominations than these.' And he brought me into the inner court of the house of the Lord. And behold, at the entrance of the temple of the Lord, between the porch and the altar, were about 25 men with their backs to the temple of the Lord and their faces toward the east, worshipping the sun toward the east." In the Illuminati hierarchy, one of the first oaths taken is in front of the Grand Druidic Council, and includes some variation of an oath that includes the cult members promising to take on the seal of Lucifer, whom they call the Father of Light, and pledge to commit their eternal life to serve him as their savior and spiritual light. It's always about destroying God and Jesus for the occult, exchanging him for this false light of enlightenment. The main objective of all of the mystery religions, or Mystery Babylon as the Bible calls it, is to defeat God. Brothers see light as referring to wisdom, knowledge, and truth. The snake is their symbol for this. Many of the world religions use that same definition for light. In Hinduism, the word is made of two words, Baha and Rata, which means light and devoted respectively. It stands for the individual soul that is enlightened or dedicated to the light. In Buddhism, light is treated as one of the attributes of Buddha. The enlightened Buddha is treated as identical to the realm of great light. The most important feature of Zoroastrianism is its philosophy of light. Churches welcome the return of the light, or the sun, on the winter solstice when they pass the light during Christmas Eve candle services.
Il Natale ci dona ogni anno la certezza che la luce di Dio continuerà a brillare nonostante la nostra miseria umana.
The whole world celebrates the winter solstice, especially churchianity. The national holiday of celebration is Wednesday, Christmas Day, but before that, there will be celebrations all over the world this weekend by people of many faiths, including practicing Christians, to mark the winter solstice or return of the light.
Even today, remnants of this religion of the sun have survived, as the solstices and equinoxes are still celebrated by billions of people. For example, Christmas is traditionally celebrated at the winter solstice, which is in December in the Northern Hemisphere, while Inti Raymi in Peru is the Inca celebration of the winter solstice, which occurs in June in the Southern Hemisphere. Both are actually based on the celebration of the same event, which is the birth of the spiritual sun from out of the darkest time of the year. In fact, many of the world's religions are offshoots of this once global religion of the sun. The religion of ancient Egypt, the Vedic and Hindu religions, those of the Inca and Maya, the Zuni and Hopi, the Yazidi, Minoans, Thracians, Druids, Indo-Europeans, and many others.
Religion isn't really about ritual and tradition and aesthetics. At the core of any religion is what it worships. To worship something means to what do you anoint? Or what do you give power? Or perhaps, where do you put your faith? And who do you give authority? The site Brother Manry Matters says that without darkness, he could neither see nor appreciate the light. The darkness of unseeing eyes is in itself a treasure, and that it teaches the lesson of dependence upon others, of friendly hands, and of the eventual unveiling to come and the unforgettable anticipation of new knowledge. A further reference to the scriptures, they mean biblical scriptures, is interesting when, before the unveiling, there is darkness on the face of the deep. This darkness is fully emphasized in the degree. The Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Here we all can recall that never-to-be-forgotten moment when it is only by knowledge of and a dependence upon the great architect of the universe that illumination is possible. By this we mean Brothermanic illumination. Helena Blavatsky was a Zionist Ukrainian aristocrat, brotherman, and the credited founder of Theosophy.
I've even held Theosophical Society meetings here.
What's that?
A sort of religion. Seeking a personal connection to the divine truths. To that hidden knowledge.
Zism appears to have originated in what is now modern Ukraine, what, as I mentioned earlier, was Scythia. She said modern Brother Manry is undeniably the dim and hazy reflection of primeval occult Brother Manry, of the teaching of those divine brothers who established the mysteries of prehistoric and pre-diluvian temples of initiation raised by truly superhuman builders. What she calls divine brothers are the fallen angels before the flood.
They're described in different cultures as wandering sages who brought with them the knowledge of agriculture, astronomy, building and writing, as well as a great spiritual knowledge. This knowledge was the religion of the sun, which arose wherever they instigated civilization, and was said to be the religion from the former Golden Age. Their civilizing and spiritual knowledge was used to build many of the ancient sites we're familiar with today, that all aligned to the sun and led to the eventual creation of a now lost global civilization that diffused throughout the world. This is why the same or similar ancient symbols, megalithic structures, languages, myths, measurements, practices, and spiritual teachings appear in so many different parts of the world.
They established the mysteries. There is no older doctrine than the one taught by the fallen. It has been rebranded as different religions, but at its core, every religion worships the light. The quote is attributed to Brother Blavatsky because brothers did not officially have sisters until the 20th century. In 1927, Charles W. Ledbetter wrote the book The Hidden Life in Brother Manry, which was published by the Theosophical Publishing House in India, with a preface by Annie Besant, who became the second president of the Theosophical Society. She writes, "To look for the light, to see the light, to follow the light, were duties familiar to all Egyptian brothers. Though the darkness in that ancient land never approached the density which shrouds the West today. Theosophy and the New Age are the daughters of Brother Manry, and the esoteric Knight Templar and Jesuit-founded Brother Manry is the workhorse of the world governments. In Eastern religions, the universe usurps the place of a personal god within the New Age movement as an impersonal, nebulous energy source. Certain New Age philosophies and churchianity sometimes promote the idea of total acceptance of things, even injustice, evil, and mental, spiritual, and physical slavery. It's impossible to meditate your way to enlightenment or peace in a corrupt world. All you'll achieve is effectively becoming an NPC, a non-player character, an inactive observer, removing yourself from the battle altogether, preventing you from taking any real actions against the occultists and principalities, physically and especially spiritually. Well, hang on. You're still enslaved. The world is enslaved. You can't live your best life when you're under slavery. You have New Age gurus like Alan Watts, who popularized Eastern philosophies and religion for a Western audience, with greatest hits like "Man suffers only because he takes seriously what the gods made for fun." Vague, wishy-washy, feel-good spirituality tends to sit better with most people than religions do. The problem is roundabout circular analogies so vague they never end up saying anything at all. But wishful thinking sells. Solipsism says that there is no such thing as absolute truth, and we can never know the truth. That is a complete lie. There is objective truth, and the truth of our reality lies in our Creator, not in pseudo-philosophies and so-called gnosis. His truth doesn't change. The one who has no objective truth and changes it to suit his own needs is the fallen angel that deceived Eve in the Garden of Eden. The ones that enslave you cannot save you. One way the neo-form of the exoteric New Age has been promoted within Western churches is yoga. I discussed this in an Inconvenient History, but basically yoga originated from the ancient worship of Hindu gods against the first commandment. Shiva is even given the title Lord of Yoga, and Krishna was an advocate. Yoga means to yoke or to combine with Brahma, the creator god in Hinduism, but it is also a worship of the sun. As you'll remember, the Hindu religion moved east from Sumeria.
Yoga is in many ways the heart of Hinduism. There is no Hinduism without yoga, and there is no yoga without Hinduism.
You can't take Hinduism out of yoga.
Yoga goes all the way back to the Hindu god Shiva, who is called Yogeshwara, meaning Lord of Yoga. You find yoga being taught in several of the major Hindu scriptures. Krishna, one of the many Hindu gods, was an advocate of yoga. Yoga is also mentioned in the Gita as the main means to attaining salvation. The word means basically to yoke, union. The goal of the Hindu is to be yoked with Brahman.
The Hatha Yoga, I always regarded it as simply a physical exercise. I never saw it as a spiritual exercise. But Maharishi used to tell us that if all we did was the yoga, that we would eventually get to cosmic consciousness because of the Kundalini.
A mystical presence is stimulated by the mind through the movements themselves. The exercise can't be neutral or separated from the philosophy which accepts that a consciousness change will take place. Hatha, or physical poses, asana movements, whatever they be named, are deliberately positioned to oppress or force the flow of Kundalini spirit, a spiritual message to move into the body.
Yoga again has the outward form and the inward form.
The outward form and the inward form.
The physical one and the spiritual one. And none of these pastors are able to distinguish between the physical aspect and the spiritual aspect. They think it's only physical exercise, and they try to introduce this to the common man. Common man always blunders because he can't differentiate.
The sun is the original teacher of yoga, and today, as a result, most of the Hindus worship the sun god.
The New Age tries to get Bible verses to agree with their beliefs. They say, well, in the Bible it says you are gods. That refers to Psalm 82:6, where judges and rulers are being told to judge wisely. The word gods is used in the context of many things, but in this verse specifically references a judge or a ruler, not an angelic immortal being. It says, "You are gods, sons of the Most High, all of you. Nevertheless, like men you shall die and fall like any prince." In this context, it's clear this does not mean we are immortal gods. One of the reasons yoga has become so popular in the West is due to how brothers and their higher ranks favor this philosophy and promote it around every turn. Brother Manry and the countless organizations tied to them have been used for centuries to infiltrate society at all levels to spread their religion. Brothers help brothers get elected, become CEOs, or to become famous. If you're not in the club, you won't get very far. But most in the lower level of the club, like the Blue Lodge or Shriners, don't realize they're not really part of the real agenda at all. Think about how useful it is to have an entire army of deceived members of an esoterically powerful organization. They keep the facade for you so you can hide behind their ignorance. They will defend the name of the organization they belong to tooth and nail without really knowing the real core of truth. It's a good defense system. I'm going to say it once again. No Christ follower should ever be part of Brother Manry. Their views, symbols, goals, and leadership are anti or against Christ and his teachings. It is not just a club or a social organization. Even if it were, no one claiming to follow the one true God has any business being a part of it. Psalm 26:4-5 says, "I do not sit with men of falsehood, nor do I consort with hypocrites. I hate the assembly of evildoers, and I will not sit with the wicked." Manly P. Hall, the great Brother Manic leader, wrote, "Through the labyrinth of diversity, only the illumined mind can and must lead the soul into the perfect light of unity." New Age leaders who have been illuminated by the Brotherhood of the Great White Lodge have been helped by and promoted by the Brothers. So who is the Brotherhood of the Great White Lodge? They are called various names, such as Ascended Masters or Spirit Guides. They are spirit beings who channel to the New Age leaders. These Ascended Masters are also variously called the Hierarchy, and the Brotherhood of Light, by channeler J.J. Herding, the Brotherhood by channeler Richard Keininger, and the Divine Hierarchy of Great Beings of the Universal Brotherhood by channeler Erland Cheney. They have provided much of the information that the New Age literature consists of. Again, as I've discussed, the Luciferian system is set up like a hierarchy. This is another example of gatekeeping and secretive nature of Luciferianism, both light and dark. One more reason the Creator God is different from all other systems. He sent himself in the flesh to destroy the hierarchical system and provide a direct line to God without any need for gatekeepers or those with secret knowledge. Hosea 4:1-2 talks about how God's children are destroyed from lack of knowledge. Hear the word of the Lord, O children of Israel. For the Lord has a controversy with the inhabitants of the land. There is no faithfulness or steadfast love, and no knowledge of God in the land. There is swearing, lying, murder, stealing, and committing adultery. They break all bounds, and bloodshed follows bloodshed. Then, in verse 6, God says, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, because you have rejected knowledge. I reject you from being a priest to me, and since you have forgotten the law of your God, I will also forget your children." While this verse refers to lack of knowledge about God, the Creator, people have also been destroyed for lack of knowledge and caution about our enemy. You can't win a war against an enemy you don't know. And that's what this series is all about. I found this comment interesting. It says, "I always thought that there was one religion underneath all religions. When I was a kid, I wondered why people of different religions fought each other because it all seemed to be one and the same, just different ways of celebrating, dressing, traditions, and so on." A friend of mine said that he noticed how all religions and belief systems are generally accepted, even congratulated if you're a part of them, while the belief in Christ is usually met with discouragement or flat-out hatred. If someone claimed to be a Buddhist or to follow the New Age, people would congratulate them, acting as if they have started a great path of self-discovery, they're on a journey, they're finding their true self, and they've made such a great choice. And if someone follows Jesus, it's as if all of a sudden they are a complete fool. Yet all the other beliefs follow the first lie told by Lucifer. "Ye will not surely die, and will be like a god." The light is a common thread throughout all religions, philosophies, and occultism. That's why it's possible that We already have a one-world religion, a worldwide object of worship, the light. But we cannot talk about the light without talking about the personification of this false light himself, Lucifer. In the next part of this Mind Game series, we will be discussing exactly who and what Lucifer is. So please come back when you are spiritually prepared and we can tackle this topic together. Thank you all for watching this video. I will see you next time. Until then, take care. Bye. Hi everyone, it's Alexandra, and this is part 2 of the video series called Mind Game. In part 1, I discussed the light and its role in all religions and philosophies. This video builds on that one, so if you haven't seen that one yet, I recommend doing so before watching this one. In this video, we will be discussing who and what Lucifer is. Why? Well, while we're here in this world, we're in a battle. Jesus Christ is the only one who can save us from this world, from this mind game. James 4:7 says, "Submit yourselves therefore to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you." We have to talk about Lucifer in order to know how to resist, oppose, and stand against him. Before going into esoteric and occult topics, you need to be spiritually prepared. We are at war, and your best weapon is the truth. Your best defense is the Word of God. What I do between working on videos is spending time building my relationship with God. I expect most of you to do the same so we can talk about difficult topics together, being well prepared and protected. Alright, shall we get started? The personification of so-called enlightenment and knowledge comes from the light bringer himself, Lucifer, which literally means light bearer. The word Lucifer is derived from the Latin roots lux, meaning light, and fere, to carry, meaning light bearer or light bringer, light carrier, one who brings light. Most know that Lucifer is a who, but in occultist circles, it's also a what. So what is Lucifer then? Well, Lucifer is not just a name, it's also a description. Charles W. Ledbetter refers to the senior deacon in Brothermen rituals as taking on the role of Lucifer. The senior deacon is the Lucifer who bears the light to his fellow men. Theoretically then, anyone can be a light bearer or a Lucifer. Helena Blavatsky's Lucifer magazine is a what? And I quote, "designed to bring to light the hidden things of darkness," end quote. Or the instrument, the Lucifer telescope, which allows astronomers to see through darkness. The acronym stands for the Large Binocular Telescope Near Infrared Utility with Camera and Integral Field Unit for Extragalactic Research. The name has since been changed to Lucy. Lucifer is part of the Large Binocular Telescope, which happens to be right next to the Vatican Observatory on Mount Graham in Safford. The Vatican has an observatory in Arizona manned by J astronomers. Now its next door neighbor is named for the devil. Alice Bailey, who was Helena Blavatsky's successor, writes in the preface of Lee Penn's book, Folks.Dawn, quote, "Therefore, the revolt of the angels against God was part of the divine plan of evolution. Bailey said that the great law of duality came into action, bringing about the fall of the angels as they descended from their sinless and free state of existence in order to develop full divine awareness upon earth, through the medium of material incarnation and the use of the principle of mind." Bailey says that at the inception of the divine plan, there took place the original war in the heavens, when the sons of God who responded to the divine urge to experience, to serve, and to sacrifice separated themselves from the sons of God who responded to no such inspiration, but who chose to stay in their original and high state of being. The idea of the fallen angels being the, quote, good guys is the foundation of Luciferianism. A common misconception that was explosively popular in the 2010s via social media was the fear of an all-knowing, nefarious group called the Illuminati. While most dismissed this as saying Adam Weishaupt's version of the Illuminati from Bavaria disbanded in the 1700s, many believed a small group of people controlling the world were called the Illuminati. While the Illuminati is as old as the knowledge handed down from Lucifer himself based on that definition of what Lucifer means, a centralized group or cult of people called the Illuminati is more fairy tale adjacent than reality. Anyone, anywhere, can be in the Illuminati since it isn't a place. It's a title. Illuminato, Illuminata, Illumilati. Raviolo, singular. Ravioli, plural. Illuminato, Illumilati. An enlightened one. Someone who has hidden or secret knowledge. Someone who is enlightened. The Illuminati are the enlightened ones. Therefore, all Luciferian organizations have people who are Illuminati. Therefore, the Illuminati are everywhere. Anyone the highest position in a profession that dictates the way the world works is a Lucifer. So, that was the what. But who then is Lucifer? Lucifer, the fallen angel who deceived Eve in the Garden of Eden. This is in multiple versions of the canonical Bible as well as in extra-biblical texts. The term Lucifer is a Latin translation of the Hebrew description Hallel ben Shakar. Hallel is a root word that means to shine, to make a show, to boast, and thus to be clamorously foolish. Ben means sun, and Shakar means dawn. So Hallel ben Shakar means shining one, son of the dawn. It doesn't really mean morning star, as some translations say. This descriptor is found in Isaiah 14:12-14. This verse is in the context of the fall of the king of Babylon. But there are some schools of thought that say that this is not just talking about a human king. It might be talking about the power behind the evil king or helping him. The king would probably not have said he was going to have a throne that was above God's because he most likely did not care about the Hebrew God. He was the king of Babylon after all. It could be talking past the king and to the powerful angel or angels that were influencing the king at the time. In Egypt, pharaohs were well-known channelers and seen as speaking for the gods. The same way I refer to those who rule this world, I'm not talking about the low-level humans or exoteric congregations or religious practitioners or the misinformation given by the media in television shows or movies about these elite. I'm talking about the powerful entities behind the top tier of these groups. In a lot of cases, if you know their names and see their faces, they're not very high up. Anonymity is prized above all else. Lucifer and the other fallen angels have been the evil, invisible power behind the world system he created, using kings and rulers of Babylon, Tyre, Persia, Greece, Rome, and all of the other empires since, including America. Isaiah could be talking to the powerful angel that introduced sin into the world and caused the fall of man. Lucifer was given a high and exalted position until iniquity, injustice, and unrighteousness was found in him. According to Isaiah 14:13-14, that iniquity was that he said in his heart that I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Notice the importance of the I wills. Lucifer was also given free will. But free will does not equal freedom from consequences. To bring it down to a completely human example, countries have laws. When they're violated, there is punishment. In a perfect world, the laws are in place for the good of the people. Now, the Quran says angels do not have free will at all, and were created from light to serve Allah. That's it. That's all they do. Quote, they do not disobey Allah in what He commands them, but do what they are commanded, says the Quran 66:6. That is not true. Lucifer was not a jinn or other demon, as Islam tries to claim to explain their way out of not having rebel angels. Yet the presence of evil worldwide and the veneration of the fallen by every occult group proves otherwise. Matthew 24:41 mentions the devil and his angels. Then he will say to those on his left, depart from me, you cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. We can see this type of message again in Ezekiel 28:14-15, where it seems like God is talking to the king of Tyre, but he might be talking not only to the king, but also past the king. You were an anointed guardian cherub. I placed you. You were on the holy mountain of God. In the midst of the stones of fire you walked. You were blameless in your ways from the day you were created, until unrighteousness was found in you. Lucifer decided he wanted to be the creator. That was the unrighteousness or iniquity that was found in him. He didn't want to serve God. He wanted to be God. Lucifer is an angel and was created to guard the very throne of God, what cherubim and seraphim do. There are different types of classes of angels in the Bible. The main ones are the seraphim, the cherubim, sometimes called cherubim, and the archangels. Isaiah describes seraphim in chapter 6, verses 2-3. Above him stood the seraphim. Each had 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face, and with 2 he covered his feet. And with 2 he flew. And 1 called to another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. Cherubim are mentioned in Genesis 3:24 as guarding the tree of life with a flaming sword in the Garden of Eden after the fall. They were also depicted on the top of the Ark of the Covenant in Exodus 25:18-19. Ezekiel 1:4-14 details a vision of them. There are many similarities between the seraphim and the cherubim. Both are winged creatures, anthropomorphic, bright like fire and lightning or plasma, and both are near the throne of God and appear as guardians. So these 2 classes of heavenly beings are closely related, and the terms are often used interchangeably. Seraphim appear as fiery or radiant serpent-like creatures, and the word comes from a root meaning to burn. In the context of angelic beings, it is used synonymously in the Hebrew scriptures with the word nakash, denoting glorious, shining serpent or dragon, from an assumed root meaning to be bright. This word also describes Satan in the Garden of Eden. The word seems to be used interchangeably for seraphs or serpents, which make the study a bit more difficult as to what form Lucifer appeared to Eve in the garden itself. This is Genesis 3-1 in Strong's Concordance, and in verse 1 it says, Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field. The word serpent in Strong's is 5175, nakash. And the etymology says the word is from 5172, a snake, from its hiss or a serpent. Since the word was originally from Strong's 5172, let's see what that definition of the snake is. The origin says a primitive root, properly to hiss, or to whisper a magic spell, generally to prognosticate, which means to foretell or prophesy. Certainly, divine enchanter, an enchantment, to learn by experience, indeed diligently observe. The Greek Strong's says to practice divination, divine, observe signs, learn by experience, diligently observe, practice fortune-telling, take as an omen. That's a Hebrew grammar verb stem that means to shatter. To practice divination, to observe the signs or omens. If we check the other times the word serpent is used in 3:2, and in 3:4, and in 3:14, the definition is the same. This word can refer to someone who learns the ways of the occult, someone who wishes to be enlightened through gnosis. Jesus used the same word for the Pharisees in Matthew 23:33. Ye serpents, ye generation of vipers, how can ye escape the damnation of hell? If I click on 3789, it gives me the Greek Strong's definition. Probably from 3700 through the idea of sharpness of vision, a snake, figuratively, as a type of sly cunning, an artful malicious person, especially Satan, serpent. The Hebrew Strong says a snake, a serpent. With the ancients, the serpent was a symbol of cunning and wisdom. The serpent who deceived Eve was regarded by the Jays as the devil. And here's a familiar number, 5175. That's the same definition as we just got for the serpent in Genesis. And there's the practitioner of the occult again. Since Jesus was not talking to literal snakes, he was actually calling out the Pharisees for their occult practices. They were the Luciferians of their day, following what Lucifer had taught Adam and Eve. Please look into that if you're not familiar. What's interesting to me about all of this is that the action of Lucifer performed in the garden was indeed whispering a magic spell, to teach secret knowledge, so that Adam and Eve might attain godhood, or become visionaries, having raised the Kundalini to become enlightened ones. Raising the Kundalini is akin to being born again in Luciferianism, but being born again to Lucifer, not Jesus. The use of serpents being connected to enlightenment, knowledge, and the mysteries is a worldwide phenomenon.
A long time ago, there was a Navajo medicine man who had gone to the Kingman mine, and to the Navajo people, they say that the snakes are in part of their ceremonial dances, ceremonies, and so what the Navajo medicine man had thought of was that the brown green swirls that you see there look like snakes dancing, inside the turquoise, and so they called that the ceremonial turquoise.
Also, the worldwide depiction of snakes as the bringer of fire, light, and knowledge gives credence to Lucifer's either serpentine appearance or characteristics. Remember that Lucifer does not work alone. Hundreds of watchers fell, and he most likely has many angels and other living creatures working alongside him to deceive humanity. The Eastern occultism of the Kundalini is the same as the Western Kabbalah. While they are different spiritual systems exoterically, they share the same symbols and esoterically are no different. So is the same idea of the Kundalini, the serpent, being at the base of the spine and going up to Dot, gnosis, partaking in the pineal gland. The imagery depicted on the plumed serpent mound. Brazilian occultism called Umbanda also corresponds to Kabbalah. In Druidism, the life force or energy force is considered to be the dragon, sometimes called a winged lion. They all explain the same idea, the same symbolism, just different language. If you remember from the first video in this mind game series, Kabbalah is not a religion, it's a philosophy. And many different belief systems practice it. Ultimately, it's a practice of worshipping the light. A book called The Serpent Myths of Ancient Egypt, written by William Ricketts Cooper in 1873 and archived online by Cornell University, discusses the uraeus, or the rearing cobra that was a sign of royalty in ancient Egypt. The serpent as uraeus is simply the phonetic of the letter G. This may be another reason the G figures so prominently in Brother Man iconography. The conclusion I've come to is this. It doesn't matter really what type of angel Lucifer is, but the fact that he is an angel who came to earth and taught men all kinds of worthless and wicked things, along with other angels who did the same. We can see proof of this in our history and every day in symbolism and artwork and idolatry. Okay, so we've talked a little about serpent symbolism and how it refers to wisdom, probably associated with the seraphim. But what symbolism is associated with cherubim? The occult uses lions, oxes, and eagles in their symbolism often, possibly in a way to honor the fallen. We can find proof of this with the tetramorph, a four-faced creature rooted in the Sumerian zodiac. Another example of ancient cultures worshipping the angels who fell, taught humans all kinds of things, and in turn, the humans ended up worshipping them. God created holy angels. Some became fallen angels once they turned their back on God. But God made the way that they look, so animals are not evil in themselves. It's the symbolism put onto them that makes them represent evil things in the occult, like the ox. An ox is just an ox, but to the occult, it refers to Moloch and Baal, or child sacrifice. According to Myths of Babylonia and Assyria by Donald A. Mackenzie in 1915, quote, the animals associated with the god Asher were the bull, the eagle, and the lion. He either absorbed the attributes of other gods or symbolized the self-power of which the animals were manifestations. You'll remember that Asher correlates to Marduk, Baal, Osiris, and Osiris is also Nimrod. Depictions of these creatures can be seen on the Ishtar Gate, the 8th gate of the city of Babylon. The term cherubim is of uncertain origin. It could be related to the Greek word grypos, meaning curved or hooked, which is also the exact definition of a griffin, or a winged creature, and the phonetically similar cherub. The definition of a griffin is a fabulous beast with the head and wings of an eagle and the body of a lion. Or the word could have been from the Akkadian caribou. A related Hebrew word is cherub. Ezekiel 1:4-28 describes what cherubim looked like. As I looked, behold, a stormy wind came out of the north, and a great cloud with brightness around it, and fire flashing forth continuously. And in the midst of the fire, as it were gleaming metal. And from the midst of it all came the likeness of 4 living creatures. And this was their appearance. They had a human likeness. As for the likeness of their faces, each had a human face. The 4 had the face of a lion on the right side, the 4 had the face of an ox on the left side, and the 4 had the face of an eagle. Such were their faces. The griffin has the face of an eagle, the body of a lion, the tail of a dragon, wings of a bat, and the feet of an eagle. The word griffin, or the winged dragon, comes from the word wyren, that is derived from Middle English wyver, from Old North French viver or viper. Griffins and dragons figure heavily in the art and mythologies of countless cultures. For example, the red dragon on the flag of Wales, or China, and the biggest empire most have never heard of, Tartaria. Tartaria was a massive landmass and empire with different types of cultures in it and very distinct architecture. I have an odd story to add. So, a repairman came to my house and he looked different from any ethnicity that I had seen before. The whole time he was working, I was trying to put my finger on, like, where in Asia he must have been from. Eventually I just asked him and he said, my people have no country anymore. I'm Hmong. Now, Hmong and Mongol are 2 totally different ethnic groups with different cultures and customs and differences like that. But he said that the elders have told them that the Hmong are related to the Native American Indians. So, me being me, I just decided to ask, were your people from Tartaria? And he goes, "How do you know that?" He agreed and explained that Tartaria was their country long ago, and now they have no homeland. About 40 years ago, the U.S. government brought over many Hmong who had emigrated to Vietnam and Laos. Brotherman Albert Pike mentioned in Morals and Dogma that Tartaria used to be near China. A mockery of Tartarian architecture can be found in Kazakhstan, once called Khazaristan, in its capital of Astana, which is an anagram for Satana, that has now been renamed, complete with brothermanic pillars Yashin and Boaz. The presidential palace, Acorda, is meant to look like the architecture of Tartaria. This is the same style as the Vatican and the Capitol building. Back to the 4 faces of the cherubim used in the occult. The ox face of the cherubim is represented in Moloch, Baal, or Pan. The eagle figures into Luciferian symbolism as well.
And if you fall as Lucifer fell.
Notice the placement of the eagle, a common occult symbol for Lucifer. And it's also the national bird of America. In the U.S., the Freedom Statue was placed on top of the Capitol Dome in 1866, a 19.5-foot tall statue of a god or goddess morphing into an eagle, or having the head of an eagle. The Statue of Freedom faces east, toward the sun, and the sculptor was a brother man. As I said in my other videos, Lucifer has influenced many powerful men throughout history. Judas was one example. And he is still using countless humans to do his bidding, and sometimes a griffin is shown with a human face. Lucifer is referred to as a lion in 1 Peter 5:8. Be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. The lion is used in brothermen initiations. That doesn't mean that the ox, the lion, and the eagle are bad. All cherubim look that way because God made them perfectly. It's just interesting that the occult often uses those animal archetypes, and they're used to represent their gods, as if every culture shares the same story of these characters coming to Earth being worshipped. The symbol of Saturn was around before the exodus of the Jays from Egypt. It was a 6-pointed star. Notice the 4 faces: man, eagle, lion, and ox. This star is not the Star of David. In fact, Acts 7:43 says, "Yea, ye took up the tabernacle of Moloch, and the star of your god Remphan, figures which ye made to worship them, and I will carry you away beyond Babylon." This star replaced the menorah as the symbol of Israel when the Rothschilds created present-day Israel in 1948. Please note that most people inside Israel are not on an esoteric basis, so very few are Zeists. Just like most people in America have no idea what their leaders actually believe. I don't ever want to promote racism. Alright, so we've talked about what Lucifer is and the type of angel he may be, but what is his name? Lucifer's name can be found in the first, emphasis on first, book of Enoch, translated by R.H. Charles. The first Book of Enoch is biblically endorsed as canon in various scriptures, yes, many more than just the Book of Jude. For example, Enoch 9:8-9 describes how the Watchers, or the fallen angels, married women and fathered the Nephilim. You can pause the video if you want to read the slides here. The same information is given in Genesis 6:1-4. The canonical Bible confirms Enoch's description of the fallen angels fathering children who were giants. I'm not trying to make anyone read Enoch who doesn't want to read Enoch, but I think it's a good resource that's worth investigating. A word of caution here. There are 2 other books of Enoch, the second or the Slavic version and the third Book of Enoch. Neither one of those have anything to do with the original, the first Book of Enoch, or the Ethiopian version. The Jayish Zohar, which is a compilation of esoteric teachings, uses the second Book of Enoch, which is called Echelo Rabbati. It includes magical rituals and incantations to summon angels and to ascend and descend from heaven, attempting to become an angel. Some practitioners of the Zohar, including the rabbi credited with writing it, have died in this process. The third Book of Enoch is also in the Zohar, and is called the Sefer Echelo. The name Metatron is used in these writings to represent Enoch. You may have inadvertently been exposed to these teachings of the Zohar if you've heard the name Metatron used to refer to Enoch. The second and third Book of Enoch are mystical Jayish teachings and have nothing to do with the first Book of Enoch. No, Enoch is not in the modern canonical Bible any longer. So, who determined which books of the Bible were divinely inspired? With research and study, you can find the groups of men who decided over centuries which books would be included and which would not. The first was a group of 120 rabbis called the Great Men of Assembly, later called the Sanhedrin, who lived between the First and Second Temple eras in Israel. The Sanhedrin was essentially the Jewish Supreme Court and was primarily made up of Pharisees. They decided which books would be included in the Old Testament, and then later, the Catholic Church, after a series of councils, Nicaea, Laodicea, Hippo, Carthage, and Trent, decided on the rest of the books. This was a sin of omission, by taking entire books out. You can't throw out the validity of Scripture based on occultists leaving things out and translating different versions. The original manuscripts still exist and can be read and compared. God's word can still easily be proven despite the attempts to confuse. The information given by Enoch disproves the Luciferians' version of history, the Stone Age, the Ice Age, cave people, dinosaurs, scientism, evolution, sci-fi cosmology, and heliocentrism, the most literal form of worshipping the light. Even modern scientism as we know it is a religion. Those who played a major role in spreading scientism values across the world were brothers, occultists, alchemists, Rosicrucians, Kabbalists, and philosophers. In other words, Luciferians. 1 Timothy 6:19-21 says, "Avoid the irreverent babble and contradictions of what is falsely called knowledge, for by professing it some have swerved from the faith." The King James said, "science falsely so called," instead of knowledge. Strong's Concordance translates the word as gnosis. Merriam-Webster defines gnosis as esoteric knowledge of spiritual truth held by the ancient Gnostics to be essential to salvation. Google translates it as the knowledge of spiritual mysteries. What Paul was saying in 1 Timothy is that part of fighting the good fight of faith is to avoid the babble and contradictions of gnosis, like what secret societies, occult groups, and Kabbalah and other philosophies teach. The disciples face the same enemy we do, the same vipers who whisper secret knowledge. Nothing has changed. The mysteries have continued to this day. Sure, maybe they've been rebranded and repackaged, but they're still the same tired old lies. Just one micro example is that of the Royal Society in England, which was arguably the birthplace of modern science. From there, discoveries like those of Sir Isaac Newton and Charles Darwin were supported. It was the Brothermen who made the Royal Society a reality. Sir Robert Morley was a Brotherman and one of the founders and the first president of the Royal Society of London. Newton, of course, was famous for his obsession with alchemy, which was coined by Hermes Trismegistus, who was called the father of alchemy, which involves transmutation of elements and transcendence of consciousness. One of the goals of alchemy was the transmutation of lead to gold, dark to light, dark to light, dark to light. The scientific revolution led to the Enlightenment, which was influenced by the idea of the power of human beings being able to discern truth through reasoning and rationalism. What this really did was branch out their control beyond the walls of religious buildings and into every facet of modern society. Some people believe that religion is just what happened before science was invented. But just keep in mind that every piece of science on your dinner table was lovingly crafted by druids, Zeists, Jaists, brothers, occultists, or Luciferians. So, by eating that meal, you are what you eat, and you too espouse their religious views, knowingly or not. Also, just because a religion might predate what is called Christianity, that does not mean that it predates God or Jesus. Nothing predates the Creator. Pre-Christianity is not pre-God. But this is not a video on the occult roots of modern science, so let's move on. Anyway, my point is, research some of the foundational characters modern science is based on, and it will reveal that they are Luciferians, who believe mystical doctrines and modern science is not separate from, but has formed its own sort of religion. Beliefs, sacred texts, leaders in the field, the list goes on. I talked more about this in my older video, Are You Believing a Lie? Many scientific inventions in the field of transportation, power, and medicine would greatly improve the lives of everyone on Earth. But scientists not in the club, so to speak, have been silenced, forgotten, murdered, or had their patents stolen. There is no question to the scientific field being extremely compromised by Luciferian agendas. As a former atheist, I can now see how the most exoteric forms of Luciferianism can be found in scientism, which is the replacement for God aimed at atheists. This is due to the way that so-called enlightened men view those lacking faith in a supreme being. Secret societies keep secrets from their initiates, reserved for their elect, and instead give false information, explanations, or definitions of symbols and themes to anyone they believe deserves to be misled. 32nd degree brother Joshua L. Rubin writes how atheists cannot join the lodge. There is a universal brothermanic requirement of belief in deity, which is followed by all irregular grand lodges in the world.
Or whatever one feels like calling the great architect behind it all.
As entered apprentices receiving light for the first time, brothers are cautioned that no atheists may be made a brother. Therefore, as soon as we become entered apprentices, we are warned not to submit known atheists for candidacy for the degrees. The first conclusion is that atheists are incapable of following God's moral law, and they are therefore incapable of meeting on the square. The most often quoted example comes from James Anderson in his Constitutions of Brothermen. A brother is obliged by his tenure to obey the moral law, and if he rightly understands the art, he will never be a stupid atheist, nor an irregular libertine. So in brothermanic literature, they think atheists are too stupid and immoral to be accepted into their ranks and learn their secret knowledge. Again, yet another contrast to the Creator God, who gives everyone an equal opportunity at the gift of forsaking this world, Lucifer's kingdom, for his eternal kingdom. An important reason that Jesus came down in the flesh was to show that there is only one way to God, and that is through him. No need for gatekeepers of knowledge, and that any worship of idols fashioned after the fallen leads to nothing but death. Further down in the article, the author admits Brother Manry is religious in nature. Quote, was Brother Manry only a society of fraternity with no religious component, such as a moose club or a charity-only organization, such as Rotary International, these stringent requirements regarding an individual's belief would not be as important. Our fraternity, however, is one with religious components. Right, before that tangent, we were talking about the Book of Enoch, the translation by R.H. Charles. One reason we're aware of it at all is because fragments of it were found between 1946 and 1956 in Qumran among the Dead Sea Scrolls, written in ancient Aramaic. Remember also that the entire first book of Enoch has always been in the Ethiopic Bible. The first book of Enoch is just one of the many books the men of the Great Assembly left out of the scriptures. It was left out of the Old Testament by the Sanhedrin because, in my opinion, it exposes their false narrative about the world. Enoch describes God, Jesus, the angels, heaven, a flat and stationary earth, biblical cosmology, the flood, and the second coming prophecies. Enoch refers to Jesus as the elect one with God. Jesus is God who was made flesh and dwelt among us, died and rose again. He was there before creation. John 1 shows that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Anyway, if you haven't read the first book of Enoch, I have left a link in the description below. Enoch enables us to be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. It gives us a more complete version of history than the Luciferian history book makers want us to have, and allows us to identify our enemies more specifically. It tells us who the fallen angels that came down were, gives their names, as well as lists all of the worthless things that they taught to humanity, like war and violence. In chapter 69, Enoch describes the 5 chief Satans or adversaries that fell. In verse 6 through 7, it tells us what Lucifer's name is. And the third was named Gadriel. He it is who showed the children of men all the blows of death, and he led astray Eve, and showed the weapons of death to the sons of men, the shield and the coat of mail, the sword for battle, and all the weapons of death to the children of men. And from his hand they have proceeded against those who dwell on the earth from that day and forevermore. Gadriel is a war angel, a master of the art of war and of complex war strategies, both psychological and physical. While teaching at the temple, Jesus confirms the traits of Gadriel, Lucifer, when condemning the Pharisees. John 8:44-45 says, "You are of your father the devil, and your will is to do your father's desires." He was a murderer from the beginning, and does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks of his own character, for he is a liar and the father of lies. But because I tell you the truth, you do not believe me. Jesus uses the same traits as Enoch to describe Gadriel, a murderer from the beginning, and a liar, Gadrael and the fallen angels are the ones who gave the people knowledge, and it is from their esoteric teachings that things like the Kabbalah, Hinduism, and consequently all of the world's religions began. It appears Lucifer's name is Gadrael. The suffix of the name Gadrael, E-L-L, means of God. It means wall of God, to wall off, to build a wall, builder of God, or even more interestingly, mason of God. This shows his character as an architect or a builder in nature. Is it any wonder then that at the highest esoteric level, this entity has the most honorable position in his own craft? The God of the world he built? I know that was a lot of info, but if you're still with me, I want to show you this image of a Brothermanic tracing board they used to teach symbolism in different degrees. The shield depicts 4 figures: an ox, a lion, an eagle, and a man. The faces associated with the cherubim. Above this figure is the shining G, higher than the shield. Again, another example of an occult depiction of Gadrael and his army. I know I talk about them in every video, but I can't overstate how important this entire institution of the society has been to parade the mysteries across the entire plane. The New Age, a catch-all term for any Luciferian, Gnostic, or ancient mysteries, is the daughter of Brother Manry, and esoteric Brother Manry is the workhorse of the world governments. To those who understand the significance of Saint Germain, and not only the Ascended Master version in the New Age, but also the characters throughout history and current events today, it is interesting to note that Charles Ledbetter, speaking on the preservation of symbols and rituals, says, "The business was always in the hands of the Shohan of the Seventh Ray, for that is the ray most especially connected with ceremonial of all kinds. And its head was always the supreme hierophant of the mysteries of ancient Egypt. The present holder of that office is that master of the wisdom of whom we often speak as the Count de Saint-Germain. Because he appeared under that title in the 18th century, he is also sometimes called Prince Rakosi, and he is the last survivor of that royal house. Exactly when he was appointed to the headship of the ceremonial ray, I do not know, but he took a keen interest in Brother Manry as early as the 3rd century AD. I explained how Saint Germain figures into the big picture at the end of An Inconvenient History, starting at an hour and a half in. Ledbetter goes on to explain some of the many characters Saint Germain has influenced throughout history, and then he says, quote, "In Brother Manry, we refer to him as the head of all true brothers throughout the world, abbreviated as the HOATF. And in some of our lodges, his portrait is placed in the east, above the chair of the Right Worshipful Master, and just beneath the star of initiation. Others place it in the north, above an empty chair. Upon his recognition and ascent as head of the 7th ray, the validity of all rights and degrees depends." Please notice that Ledbetter capitalizes him and his. This small detail is called reverential capitalization, which is the practice of capitalizing religious words that refer to a deity or divine being. Ledbetter inadvertently confirmed that Saint Germain, a character with the attributes of Lucifer, is the god of Brother Manry and by extension, Theosophy. The New Age, being the daughter of Brother Manry, also claims Saint Germain is the Shohan of the 7th ray. Now, I don't believe in New Age philosophies or characterizations, but in order to see the big picture, it's important to understand their beliefs because very powerful people believe in this. Like all legends, there are different versions, but the outline is basically the same. As I've mentioned before, the story of Saint Germain is an old one, and has been retold and passed down by Brother Manry, the New Age, the Order of the Golden Dawn, the Rosicrucians, the Knights of Columbus, and many more for centuries. His attributes, actions, and importance throughout history suggest he is behind many influential occultists and New Age channelers guiding humanity to his end goal or promoting his plan for humanity. That is the Light World Order goal. Saint Germain is considered to be the founder of the Rosicrucian, Brothermen, and the Knights of Columbus movements. Shrouded in their own self-imposed mysteries today, the Rosicrucians, Brothers, and Knights of Columbus all admit to a chief role played by Saint Germain in their rites and ceremonies. If he is considered to be the founder of these Luciferian organizations, he would figure as one of the grandest Luciferians of all time. I'm really happy for you, I'm gonna let you finish, but Saint Germain was one of the grandest Luciferians of all time. Organizations that follow the light hold this character or his, quote, energy, unquote, in high regard, especially those on the light side. There are 2 paths in all societies, the dark or the light. with an overwhelming majority on the dark path. Few influential figures were on the light side. We'll discuss this topic in the final video of the series. The New Age claims Saint Germain is many things. He is an entity, a spirit, has influenced many people throughout history, and sometimes recognized as the greatest Lucifer, the angel as well as the embodiment of enlightenment. He is their who and what. The Triangle Book is attributed to Saint Germain and is a triangular grimoire. The book itself is triangular in shape, on vellum, and written in cipher with the exception of the title page. The cipher itself is quite simple, belonging to the class found in Brothermanic documents and decodes into French. It is titled The Sacred Magic Revealed to Moses, recovered in an Egyptian monument and carefully preserved in Asia under the device of a winged dragon, written about 1750. On the first page, above a wyvern, or a griffin, are the words, quote, "By the gift of the most wise Count de Saint Germain, who passed through the circle of the earth," unquote. The writing itself belongs to a class known as grimoire or manuals of ceremonial magic. Saint Germain had a secret treasure with clues hidden in the Triangle Book with the dragon emblem. He came from the dragon lineage. He was a dragon magus, from an ancient Scythian family which legend says founded both Sumeria and Egypt after the Black Sea flood led to migration. The dragon is also a symbol of immortality. In alchemy, of which Saint Germain was well versed, a dragon usually guards treasure, like gold and precious stones. The Triangle Book is now housed in the Getty Library in Los Angeles after it was bought from Manly P. Hall, as you can see here. Saint Germain left Brotherman code instructions in the Triangle Book on how to find things in the sea that were lost after the flood, how to find diamond and gold mines, and how to preserve one's health and prolong one's life for a century, as if they were still 50. Saint Germain is revered by Brothermen and the New Age alike. He has been equated with many significant occultists throughout history. For example, alchemist and founder of Hermeticism, Hermes Trismegistus. Others include Plato, Christopher Columbus, and Francis Bacon. It's claimed that Saint Germain is closely tied to King Solomon. A letter written in the late 1700s by occultist and alchemist Count Cagliostro claims that Saint Germain said himself he was, quote, "many centuries old, and had been at King Solomon's court when the Queen of Sheba paid her famous state visit there." That's a very specific occasion Saint Germain claims he witnessed. 1 Kings chapter 10 documents the visit, and in verse 14 it says, quote, "Now the weight in gold that came to Solomon in 1 year was 666 talents of gold." The very next chapter discusses Solomon's apostasy. If Saint Germain was indeed part of the event with Solomon and Queen Sheba, it would make sense why the Brothers and other occultist societies had a mission to, quote, "rebuild Solomon's temple," being in the hearts of not only their own members, but in humanity's. The esoteric degrees understand that the temple is inside of you, which is why there is such an importance placed on psychological warfare. Remember, this war is as much spiritual and psychological as it is physical. Those who have ordered at the Eastern Bar, sorry for the censorship, the sister segment of Brother Manry, at least 5 times or received the 5 degrees of the bar are eligible to join the segment dedicated to Sheba as the Queen of the South. Francis Bacon's book, The New Atlantis, a work unfinished, from 1627, is sometimes credited to Saint Germain, and predicted a place where freedom and peace could reign under Brothermanic order without a monarchy. It would be the place where the heritage of the House of Solomon could prosper until a golden age culture of science and logic. In The Secret Symbols of the Dollar Bill, David Ovison raises the possibility that the earliest official use of the 5-pointed star in North America may have been at the request of none other than Francis Bacon. In 1727, Saint Germain developed and shared secret money-making techniques with European royalty and bankers. Instead of sharing the wealth with humanity, the bankers squandered it for themselves, so in 1729, Saint Germain created the World Trust. The World Trust is said to be the source of funding for the prosperity funds the light Luciferians say humanity will receive after the death of the old system. So many New Agers are now eagerly awaiting Nasara and Jasara, a system set up by Saint Germain, pushing Jesus out of the way as the savior. Within the New Age and Theosophy, Saint Germain takes on the role of a teacher of the Aquarian Age, and his Latin name, Sanctus Germanus, means holy brother. He claims to be the brother of Jesus, the teacher of the Piscean Age. In the New Age, Saint Germain stands beside Jesus, his equal, Jesus is God. God has no equal. This shows the audacity and illogical nature of Luciferianism, desperately attempting to absorb the truth of Jesus and spit it out as watered-down, inclusive, powerless beliefs. An effort was made in the late 1700s to eliminate Saint Germain's name from modern Brothermanic literature, when the Brothermen were taken over by a darker faction. It appears from writings that the leadership took a decided turn from Saint Germain's original ideas to a more sinister, dark agenda, also known as the Dark World Order. At the low levels of Brothermanry, the initiates are given exoteric information. They're told things like the G in Brothermanry stands for God, or geometry. As the initiate progresses through the ranks, they are given more esoteric knowledge, if they are deemed worthy to know it by the higher-ranking members. Brothermen, like most other organizations with a hierarchical structure, are usually left on an exoteric basis, never knowing the true core, history, or agenda of the religion or organization they're a part of. No one believes a lie. They believe what to them looks like the truth. So back to Godriel. Why does it matter what his name is? It doesn't really, just to show his nature as a mason or a builder. What matters are his characteristics so you can identify him. That's what this is all about. Know your enemy, so you can stand against your enemy and not be fooled any longer. Godriel is the angel that led Eve astray and threw the world into chaos, the fall, or where things all began to age and die. This is not the intended world created for humans. This is why we must endure and carry on the best we can while keeping the commandments of God and faith in his Son, Jesus Christ. God did not want us to be ignorant. Rather, Adam and Eve already had access to every bit of knowledge imaginable because God walked with them in the Garden of Eden. They could have asked him anything. Godriel told Eve that she would not die and that she would be like a god. Spoiler alert, she died. The irony is that she and Adam were already immortal. The oldest lie in the book, "Ye shall be as gods," is still being bought and sold today. Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. That seems to be a translation of what actually means knowledge from good to evil, or the knowledge of everything. In literature, this is called a merism, and is a figure of speech used to include everything between two words. When you put the Hebrew phrase tavwara into Google Translate, it says right and wrong. Enoch only calls the tree of knowledge. I also find it interesting that God tells Adam and Eve not to eat of the fruit. But Eve lies when she repeats God's words because she adds, "Neither shall you touch it." If this knowledge is everything from right to wrong, God doesn't say not to be knowledgeable about it, to look at it, to understand it. What is forbidden is to eat it, to consume it, or incorporate it, to become it, to believe it, and to let it become you. When Godriel rebelled and betrayed God, all that was good in him was replaced by darkness and violence. His pride blinded him. You see, evil is not the opposite of good. It is the absence of it. Good is not the opposite of evil. Goodness is polar to rebellion. A child who disobeys their parent or their guardian is not evil, they're rebellious. By Lucifer saying that anyone can become a god by eating of the fruit of the tree, it takes away the majesty and the power that God has, since, theoretically, anyone can do it. Knowledge is neither good nor bad, but it can be used both ways. Adam and Eve surpassed wanting basic knowledge of their world, which could have easily been granted by simply asking. Jeremiah 33:3 says, "Call to me and I will answer you, and will tell you great and hidden things that you have not known." Instead, Adam and Eve chose to follow the path to become gods themselves. This is extremely different from wanting to just gain knowledge or wisdom. Knowledge for its sake alone is self-aggrandizement. Too much of anything is detrimental to human health. The small therapeutic margin of knowledge is no different. Herbs can be helpful to heal us from common ailments, but too much or the wrong combinations can cause all sorts of things, even abortion. Like that popular meme, how much salami can a cat have? A cat can have a little salami, but too much will cause harm and malnutrition leading to untimely death. Secret knowledge may seem powerful and exhilarating in the moment, but once the novelty wears off, you'll discover that it's nearly impossible to arrive at any actual applicable truth, as opposed to the living God's truth, which never changes and causes everything else to fall away. That's the thing. The truth is evident to itself. It will always reveal itself. You don't have to worry about questioning the truth. It can stand up to anything. It's true. A point I really want to drive home today is that there is no overall truth in the mysteries. Every system views the same symbol differently, at different levels of initiation. What means something to one group means something completely different to another. It's all subjective. The interpreter is the one who decides the truth. With God, his truth never changes. It's up to the interpreter to understand this never-changing truth. There isn't only one enemy. There is Godriel, but there is also an entire plethora and hierarchy of angels and a complex system of leaders and chiefs and armies and demons. It's not logical then to say that one entity is responsible for all of the pain, confusion, and suffering in this world. There are many. We are in a battle with many types of powers in the fallen army, and we are also fighting against all sorts of wickedness, both human rulers who share blood with the fallen, as well as other spiritual entities who give them their power. The Nephilim were the children of humans and angels. They grew into giants. They were the reason for the flood, since they were destroying and killing not only humanity, but all living creatures. God didn't flood the earth because humankind was just too horrible, like the Anunnaki account alleges. God had to destroy the gigantic human, angel-animal hybrid monsters that were fathered by the fallen angels, then continued interbreeding, as well as the mystery teachings of the fallen that had caused so much violence, hatred, and sheer confusion on earth. Now, the spirits of the Nephilim killed in the flood live among us, causing havoc and leading humans towards evil. Unlike in the days of Noah, when you had a slim chance of getting away from a giant and being killed, we do have the ability not to follow these spirits, but instead to fight them. If your height was equal to your wealth, how tall would you be? Giants never left. They are financial or power giants now. The ruling class is still the wealthy. Everyone was born into this mind game, and has been under Lucifer's spell, whether they know it or not. That's a fundamental difference between God and Lucifer. God values free will so much that he gives you the opportunity to reject him. Otherwise, we would just be mindless slaves. Exactly what Lucifer has worked so tirelessly to create. That's why I said earlier that the truth is an opt-in system, and Lucifer's are opt-out. For the victims born into satanic ritual abuse, they endure endless trauma in an attempt to completely destroy their ability to consciously reject Lucifer by making them believe that they have no free will at all. The only way out of this world is through repentance of sin, trusting in Jesus as your Savior, and seeking the truth with discernment from the Holy Spirit. While we're stuck here, to have God's protection is the best form of protection from these evil spirits, evil institutions, and all kinds of deception. We also have the free will to ask for God to save us from the world and protect us. In the next and final video in the Mind Game series, we will be discussing one of the biggest deceptions believed by the, we will call them Illuminati, or the Enlightened Ones, or the Luciferians. Something called the Force. Thank you for watching this video. I will see you all next time. Bye! Hi everyone, I'm Alexandra and welcome to the third and final video in the Mind Game series. In the first video, we talked about how light features at the core of all world religions. In the second video, we talked about who and what Lucifer is. Today, we will be discussing possibly the most complex occult belief system. And if my bun looks a bit different, I was really going for continuity, but I actually recorded this entire video only to not have any of the files save. So this is round 2. Let's get started. If you have not watched the previous videos in this series, please do so because they all build on each other. Also, I advise you to please read Revelation 13. I will leave the ESV version on the screen. You can pause to read it, but if you prefer a different translation, please read that before we get started. I personally read multiple different versions, and I use an online concordance as well as a lexicon. Revelation is not just linear, but overlaps about 3 times. The book of Revelation is literal and figurative. Like the parables, symbolic language is often used to describe events both spiritual or physical or concurrent. It's written in sections. The introduction, John's vision of Jesus, the 7 churches that represent not just physical churches, but different types of believers in Jesus. Next, John is taken to heaven and describes the 7 scenes he sees there. After that comes the 7 seals, which only Jesus is worthy to open. After the seals are the 7 trumpets. Some of the seals and trumpets run concurrently. The 5th, 6th, and 7th trumpet are also the 3 woes. In Revelation 13, the fall of the beast of the sea is described in more detail in chapters 17 and 18. The beginning of chapter 19 describes the return of Jesus, which is the same event described in chapter 14. Chapters 20 through 22 detail what happens after Jesus returns for his bride. Don't forget why you're watching this video, and why you started researching and sharing information with the people around you in the first place. Ultimately, it's out of love. You don't want the people around you to be deceived. I know it's really hard when you feel rejected and alone, but please, I implore you, don't give up. If you feel overwhelmed learning about what's just beneath the surface of this world, take a break and lean on the one who has overcome the world. Alright, in this video, we will be discussing something called the Force, as well as the difference between the light and dark in the mysteries and why God does not belong to either of these sides. Illuminated or enlightened people use what they call the Force. Most people think of Star Wars. The idea is similar but not the same. Within Luciferianism, it is believed that there is a force, or an energy source, that can be used for evil or good, depending on how the practitioner chooses to use it. The same way the descriptors Satan and Lucifer refer to 2 different sides of the same coin. Satan means adversary, while Lucifer means bringer of light, respectively. But both are the ways the Bible describes the fallen angel that deceived Eve in the Garden of Eden. Satan represents the use of the evil side, or the dark side of this force, where Lucifer represents the supposed good or light side of the force.
In the ancient times, witchcraft was seen as a virtue or tool that could be used as either good or evil, depending on the user. And these 2 figures of mother and daughter are representative of how magic was seen by the ancients, with one being a source of good in the daily life of the family, and the other representing evil in her way of keeping soldiers from returning home. 2 sides of the same coin, who are magical in ways that suit their own personal needs.
The force dynamic can also be seen in Scripture as the 2 beasts of Revelation 13, the beast of the sea and the beast of the earth. One that is bad, fearsome, and terrible, and one that masquerades as good, or like a wolf in sheep's clothing. In my opinion, this second one is much more dangerous because most don't see it for what it truly is. The 2 work in a good cop, bad cop dynamic. The light side can step in to present the solution to the problem created by the dark. The narrative and the counter-narrative, they're both accounted for. This should already be obvious to those who follow God because there is no evil in him. Thus, he is incompatible with the idea of this force. The high-level Luciferians practice either black magic or white magic respectively, and the definitions for this purpose are as follows. Black magic is the use and application of the force with a selfish or material aim. It's important to understand that these people do not worship Lucifer in a traditional sense, or any of his many names. They serve him and do his bidding to achieve their own ends. They essentially think they are the ones in control, working with him, as opposed to working for him. And on the other hand, white magic is the use of that spiritual force solely for the supposed good of and the benefit of others. This force has nothing to do with God. Their light is not God. It's their God, Lucifer. Luciferians worship Lucifer in his many forms of light. The light represents his wisdom and knowledge and the fact that he is a light bringer or an enlightenment giver, right? Achieving enlightenment. Becoming a Lucifer yourself. But, as you'll remember, this light has nothing to do with the true light that is the eternal creator. Within the mystery traditions, there are 2 sides. The metaphorical light and dark. Pythagoras believed in the idea of 2 antagonistic principles. He called one unity, light, the right hand, equality, stability, and a straight line. The other he named binary, darkness, the left hand, inequality, instability, and a curved line. Of the colors, he attributed white to the good principle and black to the evil one. Do not confuse the light path with God. Light is not automatically good. To assume anything that appears light is good is to not test the spirits, which we're called to do. There is no darkness in God at all. Nothing to be the polar opposite of. Remember the core or the origin of this force tree. Gadriel, the fallen angel who deceived Eve. The teachings that brought about all the mystery religions. God has no part of that tree. It is not good and evil. It's bad and evil comes disguised. Anything resembling God or sounding slightly biblical does not mean that it is. Do not forget that Satan masquerades as an angel of light, as a Lucifer. The scriptures warn us of the many people and places used by our enemies to take on this light side of the force in 2 Corinthians 11:13-15. For such men are false apostles, deceitful workmen disguising themselves as apostles of Christ. And no wonder, for even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light, so it's no surprise if his servants also disguise themselves as servants of righteousness. Their end will correspond to their deeds. God has one path, straight and narrow. In 1 John 1:5, it says that God is light and in him is no darkness at all. God does not have to have darkness to have light. He is not like the occult yin-yang symbol. John 8:12 says, "Again Jesus spoke to them, saying, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." The light of life. What was the first thing that Lucifer proved? His light brought death to Adam and Eve. His light is the light of death. John 14:6 says, Jesus said to him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Those with the patience or the endurance of the saints who keep the commandments of God and the faith in Jesus are written in the book of life. So by contrast, belonging to Lucifer and his kingdom, your name is in the book of death. The light of Lucifer, Gadriel, and the fallen will never lead you to God, to truth. God is the only true source of wisdom. This angers a lot of people, as I'm sure many have found out in their own life. But don't let anyone's hateful words sway you from leaning on the word. Jesus said in John 15:18-19, If the world hates you, know that it has hated me before it hated you. If you were of the world would love you as its own. But because you are not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. The Bible tells us about two types of deceptions to watch out for in these end times: the false Christs and false prophets. The false Christs usually fall into the dark side, where the false prophets fall into the light side. False Christs act as Christ counterfeits. Either they play God, or they claim to follow God while actually promoting and working for the God of this world. Strong's Concordance defines a false prophet as one who, acting the part of a divinely inspired prophet, utters falsehoods under the name of divine prophecies. This includes many of the modern forms of the New Age, including those that claim that they get channeled messages via angels, like Archangel Michael or Archangel Gabriel. That is a type of a false prophet. These two types of deceptions display this force again. The false Christs, or the Christ replacements, think secret societies, government agendas, overt attempts to kill God via the media, satanic ritual abuse programming, mass programming, education, and social conditioning, also called the dark side, sometimes called the cabal or the deep state. The ones that dictate whether someone or something lives or dies. Then, there are the false prophets, the ones masquerading as good or using the light side. These are the New Age hopium teachings, the mystic teachings that fill some modern megachurches, and any love and light or positive-seeming things, like the promise of a wonderful future free of the cabal, miraculous technology, cures for diseases, and heaven on earth. Channelers and New Age teachings fall into this category. Both of these types of deceptions stem from the same root: worship of the self. But they ultimately are two different sides of the same coin, both belonging to Lucifer's kingdom, and his attempts to deceive everyone. The paths and the mysteries are often called the left-hand path and the right-hand path. The term the left-hand path was first popularized in Western occultism by, shocker, Helena Blavatsky. The tiles on the Brother-Manic floors are black and white for a reason. Nothing is superfluous. The same can be said for architecture, movie scenes, Anything you see that's been placed there has been placed there on purpose. Symbols are their universal language, and Luciferianism is built upon a world of symbols with various understandings of the same symbol. Different groups view the same thing different ways. An upward pointing triangle is a symbol of the exoteric, and the downward triangle of the esoteric. In the case of the Force, the upward represents the dark, the beast of the sea, and the downward, the light, the beast of the earth, masculine and feminine respectively. The light side of the Force does not represent the true God at all. It is the two different sides of the Force, or magical power of Godrail, that the magician aims to control. The black and the white tiles represent the two paths on which those who control the world belong. They're part of the same checkerboard floor, the human army of the fallen. For the lower levels of the hierarchy, I believe the two paths are not exclusive, but like a chess game, a player can alternate paths when it suits their pursuits or the overall goal. The black represents Saturn, lead, Satan, the dark sun, or the black sun or inversion, while the white represents the sun, the light, illumination, gold, and Lucifer. In alchemy, Saturn is associated with lead while the sun is associated with gold, and one of the supreme goals of alchemy was to transmute lead into gold. Again, not literally, but rather figuratively. The Scottish Rite motto is Order ab Chaos, or Order out of Chaos, from dark to light. A New York chapter of Brother Women Organization of Triangles posts quotes on their Instagram specifically about rising above the storm, and you will find sunshine. The dawn comes after the darkness, as well as many JFK quotes. Just more examples of dark to light.
And remember this, there's a crack in everything for a reason. How else can the light get in?
Another example of this type of imagery is Janus. Janus is the Roman god of beginnings, gates, transitions, time, duality, doorways, passages, and endings. The Romans regarded Janus as an important god, which is evident in one of his titles, Divum Deus, which means the god's god. Before a sacrifice could be made to any of the other deities, Janus would first be invoked and a libation be poured for him. The rationale for this is that since Janus was the doorkeeper to the heavens, it was through him that all the other gods and goddesses may be reached. He is the two-faced god. Being two-faced is sometimes even called being Janus-faced. Sometimes Janus is depicted with a male and a female face. Occasionally, they have a scepter and one or two keys, one gold and one of silver. The Romans, quote, borrowed Janus from the Sumerians. Usmu or Isimud was the messenger god to the Sumerian god Enki, also known as the god of Aquarius. Enki is considered to be equated to Saint Germain in New Age circles. The double-headed eagle displays the same symbolism. This image represents dark and light, androgyny, left hand, right hand, the principle of polarity, and ultimately, Godrail, two sides of the same coin. Notice how this picture also depicts the Kabbalah, two pillars representing the head, the crown or Keter, with the Ensof, the light, of enlightenment above it. The Brothermanic Forum of Light says this about the two-headed god Janus. Here yet another meaning of the two faces of Janus appears. He is the master of the two ways, to which the two solstitial doors, or the solstice gates, give access, the two ways of the right and the left. For here we find again that another symbolism indicated above, which the Pythagoreans represented by the letter Y. The Y represents the two systems, the left and the right, the dark and the light, the first beast and the second beast of Revelation 13. Two different paths, part of one letter, one leader. The two beasts described in Revelation also represent the light and dark, the left and right, the black and white, light and gold, past and future, bad and evil. Two beasts, same dragon. The left eye, the right eye, same face. Each group of occultists belongs to one of these two beast systems depending on the type of magic they practice. Godrail created these sides to fight his war. He has the entire plan, while those on either side do not. This is, according to an occult source, the Kybalion, something called the Great Fourth Hermetic Principle, the principle of polarity. The Kybalion is a compilation of Hermetic teachings or esoteric philosophy. These same doctrines are based on principles originally explained by Hermes Trismegistus. Greeks and Egyptians recognized the equivalence of Hermes as Thoth. Hermes ironically was regarded as the divine trickster, and Thoth, the god of wisdom. Sound familiar? This symbol should also look familiar, as it closely resembles the symbol most associated with the occult story of Harry Potter. There are many, quote, laws explored in the Kybalion, one of which is in the Message translation of the Bible, the law of correspondence, or as above, so below. This is one example of mystic Christianity and the occultists infiltrating churches over 100 years ago. Not every pastor, scientist, teacher, influential person, or group are brothers or in secret societies, fraternities, covens, or Illuminati. They've been taught by those who were. The system perpetuates itself. Regarding the Force, the Kybalion speaks of the principle of polarity, which explains that there are two poles in everything, and that opposites are really only two extremes of the same thing, the difference being only in degree. An obvious example is that of hot and cold, both being a temperature, varying only in degree. Like and unlike are the same, two sides of the same coin. The law of polarity states, quote, "Everything is dual. Everything has poles. Everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature, but differ in degree. Extremes meet. All truths are but half-truths. All paradoxes may be reconciled." I think of it like a battery. One pole is positive, one is negative, but both belong to the same battery. One pole, the Cabal or the First Beast system, has an agenda of the Dark World Order, often called the New World Order. This beast is made of many countries and many rulers, all of one mind or body. They make war with the saints, they oppress and rule over every tribe, people, language, and nation. Those stuck in the matrix or the mind game worship or do not work to fight against this beast and its power. Those whose names are not written in the Book of Life, which are the followers of Jesus Christ and who keep the commandments of God. But that's not all, folks. What would the dark force be without its pole, the light? That's where the second beast comes in. It specifically rises to deceive the elect, the followers of Jesus, if the first beast had not already deceived them. That is the goal stated. The other pole, this second beast, has an agenda of the light world order. The Bible tells us the second beast has two horns like a lamb but speaks like a dragon. It's interesting to me that the Geneva 1599 translation says that it looks like the lamb, as in Jesus, but speaks like the dragon. The dragon being the serpent from the Garden of Eden, Gadriel. It doesn't come as evil and murderous. It comes disguised as the light, the good coming to rid the world of evil, the first beast, of which it exercises all the power of, because ultimately they're part of the same body. It performs great signs and wonders, even making fire come down from heaven. The word here for fire can actually translate to light. There are many players on each side of these poles, but staying on just one side, no one has the complete plan. The entirety of the plan is understood and orchestrated by the battery, the body, the highest level generational occultists with the most ancient or secret knowledge working to achieve the plan Lucifer, Satan, Gadriel, whatever you want to call him, had set out to fulfill since day one. After all, the dragon gives both sides their power. The queen is an example of someone who knows the entirety of the plan, not just the Dark World Order or the Light World Order's sides. The queen said, "Light overcomes darkness," twice. Once on Christmas in 2015.
It is true that the world has had to confront moments of darkness this year. But the Gospel of John contains a verse of great hope, often read at Christmas carol services. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it.
And again on Easter in 2020.
Many religions have festivals which celebrate light overcoming darkness. Such occasions are often accompanied by the lighting of candles. These seem to speak to every culture and appeal to people of all faiths and of none. They are lit on birthday cakes and to mark family anniversaries, when we gather happily around a source of light. It unites us.
Q has said the same thing. She knew the whole plan and was making sure people understood that light overcomes darkness at this particular time in their game. A quick side note, in 2006, she was excommunicated from the Druids for a technicality. She doesn't speak Welsh, which is now required by exoteric Druidic law. The Queen played her role in the dark. She's playing her role in the light, because she has that generational knowledge of creation out of destruction, and knows how to get to Lucifer's kingdom, the golden age which according to scripture will never arrive. The death of the old and the rebirth into this new world is necessary for their plan to succeed. Meghan and Harry refused to acknowledge the death of the dark side and were effectively excommunicated. The same goes for CEOs stepping down of prominent positions, companies going bankrupt, peculiarly specific earthquakes occurring in places known for human trafficking and programming centers, and strange cryptic messages like this one about an alligator in a Moscow zoo named Saturn dying. Those who are not on the light side now, which the pendulum of power has swung to, are being systematically eliminated, either literally or figuratively, as we've discussed before. The ones on the dark side who refuse to, quote, follow the light are being stripped of their power and in some cases their lives. We'll get more into that in a second, but the stated goal of Q and President Trump is to, quote, drain the swamp.
I think in light of all of the things going on, and you know what I mean by that, the fake news, the Comeys of the world, all of the bad things that went on, it's called the swamp. And you know what happened? And you know what I did? A big favor. I caught the swamp. I caught them all. Let's see what happens. Nobody else could have done that but me. I caught all of this corruption that was going on, and nobody else could have done it.
Collectively, everything that can be regarded as the first beast essentially can be boiled down to being called the swamp. Revelation goes on to explain the next steps the second beast takes. It was allowed to give breath to the image of the beast so that the image of the beast may even speak and may cause those who would not worship the image of the beast to be slain. I've talked about my opinions on this topic before in videos like What is the Image of the Beast and An Inconvenient History. The word slain or killed means to kill outright, figuratively, to destroy, put to death, kill, slay, according to Strong's Concordance. The Greek word phoneuo is the word used in the Bible that means to literally kill, slay, or to murder someone by committing homicide. That word is not used once in Revelation. As you can see, every chapter and verse where it is used is in the green box. We've lived through a worldwide power shift among the elite occultists. The first to the second beast, the left to the right, the black to white, lead to gold, dark to light. The Bible shows this final transition in the end times. The problem with the light world order is ultimately that it is Lucifer's magnum opus, the world he has sought out since the beginning. It's Nimrod's Tower of Babel again. But this time, Gadriel truly thinks he will beat God. And at the very least, his mission is complete by taking as many souls away from God as he possibly can. One of the biggest ways this is being accomplished on the physical plane is hard for some to swallow and generally misunderstood. It is through mental manipulation or sophisticated networks of organized mind control. The work is done generationally or over time. I want to put a trigger warning here to anyone who has been or thinks they may have been involved in mind control programming or ritual abuse. Please skip ahead 10 minutes to skip this section. Some people within the Illuminati hierarchy act in ways that may seem contradictory at times to the public, but ultimately completes a mission, no matter how long or drawn out it may be. This is because more often than not we see fronts or front altars, whatever the public knows this person as.
Okay.
I feel like I've been missing out on life.
Like what part of life?
Life, like things going on. Like I feel like I'm behind or something. I know that sounds so weird, but I do.
Many, but not all, of the top of the hierarchy are programs, double agents. While not medically confirmed, many writings about Helena Blavatsky point to her having multiple personalities or being a programmed multiple. The use of mind control goes back millennia. Just one example can be found in a book from the early 1900s called Delacroix, Études d'histoire et de psychologie de mysticisme. It discusses a convent in the early 1600s that had ties to the elite genealogies that claimed to be possessed by demons. These demons made the people act like animals. They barked like dogs, they went into trances, and they displayed uncontrollable changes in personality, which they were amnesic about afterwards. This behavior describes the same type of symptoms displayed by monarch survivors who have had their minds fractured. Trauma-based programming is the intentional creation of dissociative states like dissociative identity disorder or tertiary structural dissociation. I cannot overemphasize the importance they place on fracturing the mind to create altars and systems within a slave and their hierarchies. Trauma-based programming is used in order to create people who are enslaved via mind control. The result is a system of altars within a person who have all been programmed with specific roles and tasks, and they're largely unknown by most of the others within the system or the body of the person. The mind is the most complex and powerful computer. Programming is a lot like building a computer, with software and codes and commands, and sometimes programs that run behind other programs, viruses, that sort of thing. Programming occurs in countless places such as hospitals, universities, military locations, religious buildings, medical clinics, and many, many more. By governments, the entertainment industry, religious fronts, and secret societies. Josef Mengele is one of the most well-known figures in mind control programming, and it's come a long way since World War II, as far as technology and sophistication. Mind control is by no means a new phenomenon. According to an article written by Ron Patton quoting David Carrico's book from 1992, The Egyptian Brother-Manic Satanic Connection, quote, "One of the earliest writings giving reference to occultism is the Egyptian Book of the Dead, a compilation of rituals explicitly describing methods of torture and intimidation to create trauma, the use of potions, or drugs, and the casting of spells, or hypnotism, ultimately resulting in the total enslavement of the initiate. That, I will add, is undetectable to the general public."
Patsy had sent the doll company a picture of JonBenet, and they made a doll that supposedly looked like her. Patsy saw the doll lying in a box. She said it looked like JonBenet was in a coffin.
Sometime after JonBenet was put to bed on Christmas night, the Christmas magic turned into a family nightmare.
Bear in mind that a good percentage of the people or puppets in high-level positions have countless functions, personalities, missions, and allegiances. A relatively small number of members in the hierarchy are allowed to move up with unfractured consciousness, or without multiple personalities. This also protects the hierarchy because many of the personalities don't speak to each other. They don't hold the memories each other holds. So the hierarchy are able to file away their acts like filing cabinets in the mind, never to be opened by ones that are not supposed to know that information. I talked more about this in Lucifer's Playground. It's just bizarre to have the media we do today, and we can see programming of slaves play out before our eyes.
Believe it or not, the most stunning thing about Courtney isn't her provocative appearance. It's her birth certificate. That's right, this girl is 16 years old, married to a man more than 3 times her age.
The byproduct of their own slavery is what actually ends up enslaving or programming the masses, consuming their product. Most, if not all, mass media, not independent-made things made by larger corporations and distributed to the masses, is a byproduct of the worldwide mind control programming enterprise. Take Disney, for example. No one has sold the world magic better than Disney. Mind control imagery is literally everywhere, all over the world. K-pop has quite a few examples, like this one song called Insane by Ajax. An occult piece of media can be defended as, quote, art, in order to hide in plain sight. Take Alejandro Jodorowsky's film The Hole in the Way, that form us. Media like the movies we watch, the music we listen to, these all shape the lens of our reality. We internalize the messages subconsciously. Deprogramming involves a good deal of unsticking all of this stuff. And while the themes and motives we internalize as free people on the surface are things like love overcomes all, or the hero always wins kind of a deal, but that's not true for the underground. Entire songs, scenes, and movies are different when played for a victim of mind control. The villain may win. The hero dies a horrible death. Lyrics of popular songs are different. What we get is a sanitized version of the true media used in programming slaves. One normal movie that can be studied as a script, or to learn the themes and messages used in mind control, is a cartoon called The Ringing Bell. Celebrities have displayed their programming being shifted from dark to light in the last few years. And our media works the same way. Even things like documentaries and news. What is this story trying to get me to believe? What is the narrative? Where is my mind being steered?
Now more than ever, stock selection matters.
Now, more than ever, you need a workout that you can do at home.
Now more than ever, all together now.
Right now, more than ever, we know.
Now more than ever, it's important to feel safe at home.
Because now, more than ever, being a good neighbor means everything. Like a good neighbor, stay positive.
There are various different reasons for mind control operations being carried out. All of them demonic, and all of them glorifying and working for Gadrael. More understanding is needed on this topic by the general public, which is why I'm bringing it up. Just like architecture, nothing is superfluous. Art is not just art. Music is not just music. Movies are not just movies. Everything put in front of us was placed there for a reason. Once you begin to see that, you can easily see the trickery and no longer be fooled or naive. On a more disturbing note, many passively consume very violent and vicious content through cartoons or horror films. But the reality is that the methods of torture depicted in this kind of dark media is very real and happens every day to programming ritual victims. Another issue is gatekeeping. You'll notice celebrity tell-alls that are always absent of any real substance or truth, like Leah Remini never discussing the child trafficking and programming done in this organization, or the truth of what this man is really involved in, or this man. These shows are a way to make you feel like you know everything about a group while being told absolutely nothing. So then you move on to the next topic. The bigger picture is also not complete without knowing the puzzle piece of programming. Programming millions of individuals is a major way they have accomplished their various goals. Most humans would not be able to do the things they are asked to do, or programmed to do, without programming. The Cabal or the dark side is not the only ideology using trauma-based mind control. The Alliance is just as guilty. Many modern New Age guru leaders or channelers or mystic Christians are part of the, quote, light side of programming. It's an extremely sophisticated science, again, like building a computer from scratch, but demons and magic are the foundation of it all. Okay, back to the Force, the dark and the light. Gadriel built both sides of the spiritual war we find ourselves in. One of his main goals is to return to a golden age, or to Atlantis, the world before the flood. And he uses both sides to do this in a Hegelian dialectic. Bring the world to a point of absolute desperation that any solution is better than the current situation or the proposed detrimental future. Financial ruin, oppression, loss of rights, and so on. A friend of mine once said, it's no wonder that Gadriel has created two systems to be at work in the world, one to be the darkness, and one to fool people into thinking that they aren't siding with the darkness when they actually are. Both paths are an illusion of choice, because ultimately, they're the same. It doesn't matter whether it's the right or the left, both hands serve the same master. Gadriel, or Lucifer, the dragon, the old serpent who was cursed in the Garden of Eden, gives both the Antichrist and false prophet beast systems of Revelation 13 their power, with his army of other fallen angels, demons, and Nephilim spirits making up the mind game we're in. Everything associated with dark occultists, world banks, organized crime, the pedocracy, false flags, the deep state, the underground, fear-based rituals, and fear in general.
Yes, well, if people remain under that fear spell for too long, it looks like they'll become frozen with terror. Permanently.
Those who destroy everything for personal gain and put humanity into a constant state of anxiety and terror, or the Antichrist system, the beast of the sea, can be attributed to the dark side of the Force, black magic, Satan, and the armies of Gadriel doing his left-hand work. Everything that can be associated with the light occultists, the false prophet system, can be attributed to Lucifer, the light face or side, and the armies working with this path, like claims of false hope, the military, white hats, alliance world leaders like Putin and JFK, those calling themselves light workers or New Age channels, Q, Saint Germain, gold, new technology, prosperity and peace, the antithesis to the dark side, it's pole. I even know of some pastors who are encouraging their congregation to accept the future prosperity funds I've talked about in countless videos. Both are faces of the angel Gadriel acting as the mastermind, the architect, or the builder of it all. I'm sure many of you can think of lots of other things falling into both sides. This is just a really brief overview. The 2012 film My Pet Goat 2 shows these two sides. The left and right hand both belong to Gadriel, but each path has a different purpose to fulfill and a different way of achieving their goal. The blackmail slaves, the programs, celebrities, politicians, sports heroes, well-known bankers, are lower on the totem pole of the elite, and they act like pawns in the chess game. Each believes their side will win. Only the highest level understands the entire game. These uber-elite, if you will, know the entirety of the plan. They know the plan of Gadriel, not just the dark side or the light side, but the integration of both. If both sides of a war knew the outcome was predetermined, the soldiers wouldn't fight. But since those left on an exoteric basis don't know, the pawns on each side of the chessboard truly believe they will win. The highest levels understand the world needs to be steered through both sides in order to achieve their goal, a game of Hegelian dialectics, or magic. Both sides can weave through aspects of light and dark, but follow the basis of whichever side their philosophy falls into. Left hand celebrates ego, the right hand works endlessly to destroy it, which ultimately ends up feeding it, but that's another story. What one side sees as good, the other is bad, and vice versa. The left hand is power, money, greed, self, addiction, materialism, and pleasure, while the right hand is others, love, spirituality, humility, and health. So what's positive to some is negative to others. Magical systems work like metaphysics, but instead of abstract concepts, they work via what Hegel called picture thinking, using symbols and metaphors. Most are familiar with the Kabbalistic tree of life, which has both light and dark sides, and is generally considered the, quote, positive force, usually used by those using the right-hand path. The tree of life is the most commonly known side, but there is also the Qliphoth, or the tree of death, the negative force, used mostly by left-hand practitioners. Both of these systems represent duality, the light and dark, never truly separated. One is a shadow of the other. The force of Luciferianism binds them together. This complete picture is also a depiction of the two beasts, the false prophets and the false Christs. There is no escape from the light and dark in both sides. It is always together. There is always a pole. That is where God is different. God has no polarity. He is not light or dark. He is holy, and is the eternal light with no darkness in him. The Hermetics or Luciferians believe that the mental world rules the physical. Much of this war is fought on the mental plane, and the thoughts and philosophies held by the powerful are what has shaped the world. The Illuminati use things like the Kabbalah and the Tarot as a type of universal board game. It's how they manipulate world events, powers, and their own rule. They have perfected programming so much that the population conforms to and perpetuates the reality they create for us, like a bunch of actors in a play or characters in a video game. A few of us have woken up and have broken the fourth wall or become self-aware. These powerful organizations and leaders are historically capable of shifting cultures from respect for one another into hatred for anyone who threatens the cause, leading to wars, death, hatred, destruction of nations, and so on. If the mind is like a computer, magic is akin to hacking the mind. Magic isn't some made-up fantasy story you'd see in a movie. The high-level occultists accomplish much of their goals through mental manipulation. I briefly touched on this in part 2 of the Mind Game series, where occultists were the true originators of alchemy, astrology, and psychology, with Hermes the founder of these schools of thought. Modern astronomy has been derived from astrology, chemistry arose from alchemy, and mystical psychology, or what we would now call Luciferianism, was the forerunner to modern psychology. The elite don't care about us individually. They care about us collectively. Like a school of fish, they steer the current or the direction they want us to go with magic. As humans, we all attempt to have some sort of control over our lives. Most ordinary individuals who turn to magic do so for that reason. But the elite use magic on a much larger scale and affect the entire plane. Consider this. Without mind control programming, small and large scale, would the world be where it is today? God deprograms us, and for all of us who have been freed from our programming, understand how difficult it is to detect within yourself. Yet you make decisions and actions based on what you've been programmed to accept, want, or believe. By that logic, the Force takes away free will. On a mass scale, they steer humanity in the way they want it to go. God does not force anyone. He frees you from the Force. Romans 12:2 says, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect." Don't do as the crowd does. Don't play Lucifer's mind game by his rules. God guards our thoughts and is the only true way to be deprogrammed from this mind game. Jesus is the only one who can save you from this world. You have to understand how the occult operates to understand the bigger picture of what's going on in our reality. They believe in a force that can be wielded for either good or evil depending on the practitioner's intentions. Now, this cannot be from God, since God has no pole, no other side of the coin, no evil found in him at all. God is holy. Evil is the result of being separated from God. He is entirely good, and his light is superior to any false light represented in the occult. The dark occultists worship themselves as gods. The light occultists worship themselves as part of the collective that is God. It's the black versus white, sun versus moon, never-ending tug of war between the two sides, but neither of these sides is God. Ultimately, at the absolute highest levels, it's understanding that these forces, black and white, are the same. The second beast of Revelation exercises all the power of the first beast because both are given authority by the dragon. And proof of this is given to us in Matthew 12:26, which says, "And if Satan casts out Satan, he is divided against himself. How then will his kingdom stand?" That's why this division of light versus dark isn't a division at all. It's a Hegelian dialectic. Problem, reaction, solution. Yes, the dark side, the left-hand path, is being revealed. All those who selfishly harmed humanity for their own gain are being exposed by the right hand, the light side, the one concerned on the surface with humanitarian selflessness. Every act of creation is first an act of destruction, said Pedo Picasso, and they are creating a golden age through the destruction of the old. At least they think they'll achieve this golden world. This is because people have been conditioned into thinking there is only one enemy, who appears overtly evil, and anyone who opposes him is automatically good. But many don't recognize the evil hidden in the light facade. And in this light side, there is no need for a savior, because they are the heroes, the light ridding the world of darkness. They see themselves as God. Okay, we have to do this. We're going to talk about Q for a moment. And trust me, I don't want to do this either, but this section would not be complete if I omit a large part of what's going on today.
You calling me a liar? I ain't calling you a truther.
I'm not trying to hurt anyone's feelings, and please remember that if you disagree with me, these are just my characterization of facts. I'm not trying to push my opinion onto anyone. I've been watching Q for a few years now, and it has not gone away. Actually, it's gotten bigger, and support has gone completely worldwide, unlike the utter failure of the cabal-owned and operated Cicada 3301 and Tabula Rasa. Not all, but some followers of the phenomenon known as the Q movement see it as God speaking through Q. I don't bring this up to judge anyone. I'm talking about it because I believe many are being lied to, and I'm trying to get them to take another objective look at the whole movement for themselves. Therefore, let us not pass judgment on one another any longer, but rather decide never to put a stumbling block or hindrance in the way of a brother. I'm only attempting to point and say, hey guys, I think this movement is a stumbling block. One example is a new book called QAnon and the 1,000 Years of Peace, Destroying the New World Order and Taking the Kingdom of Christ by Force. This book says, quote, what we're all experiencing worldwide is not just another political event. As QAnon post 2937 says, this is not simply another 4-year election. This is a crossroads in the history of our civilization that will determine whether or not we, the people, reclaim control over our government. Quoting the President of the United States. He's not just talking about the U.S. government or any single nation's government. He means reclaim control over the governing of the world from the worldwide criminal mafia. This will transform the world for 1,000 years. A video called The American-Made President by Carpe Diem is about having pride in America. Similar to the way Americans felt after 9/11, but instead of a tragedy, this is about a hope for a future. The video peculiarly focuses on the phrase, here we mark the, as well as Janus motorcycles. Janus is an American motorcycle company that was specifically invited to the White House to the Made in America Products Showcase. There are 46 companies that make motorcycles in America, so for this specific one to be picked seems significant. They sell bikes with names like Halcyon, Phoenix, and Griffin. Their slogan is Old Ideas for a New World. This reminds me of how the most ancient of teachings, the worthless knowledge the fallen gave to humanity, has been repackaged time and again and presented as new. Back to Q. In 2017, drop number 382, an Anon said, people hunger for light, have lived under the darkness for too long. Thank you. To which Q responds, we have tremendous worldwide support. Satan, as in Obama, has left the White House. If Obama represented the cabal, or a Satan, the dark side of the force, in this specific post, Q is acknowledging themselves as the light, the polar to the dark, a Lucifer. As you'll remember from my previous video, in the occult, the concept of Lucifer is a noun, a person as in the fallen angel, as well as a thing or anyone who is considered to be a light bearer, enlightener, or bringer of wisdom, someone who is illuminated. The point is to initiate the world into the mysteries. As Alice Bailey said in The Spirit of Brothermanry, they are therefore sometimes known as the Illuminati and can direct the searchlight of truth wherever its beams are needed to guide the pilgrim on his way. They guide the candidate until he has gained the right to stand in the east before the presence, and there, before the brethren, prove himself initiate. Stage by stage, they assist at the unfolding of the consciousness of the candidate until the time comes when he can enter into light and, in his turn, become a light bearer, one of the Illuminati who can assist the lodge on high in bringing humanity to light. Such as those in the higher levels of Brothermanry and other powerful organizations and positions, anyone who is influential in shaping the psyche of the masses is a Lucifer. The word Lucifer means light bearer, one who brings light. The light represents enlightenment or knowledge. Like the word Satan, Lucifer is not a name. It's a description. Many organizations use the description of light bringer or knowledge giver to symbolize various ideas regarding enlightenment, deeper spiritual knowledge, or illumination. Anyone who takes on the role of bearing this so-called light to his fellow men, as Brotherman Charles W. Ledbetter writes, is a Lucifer. Anyone at the highest position in a profession that dictates the way the world works, or is an influential position that shapes people's opinions or thoughts, or disseminates a crafted narrative or a script to a large mass of humanity to achieve a part in their Hegelian dialectic, no matter how small, is a Lucifer. By that definition, then, Q is a Lucifer, something bringing humanity enlightenment, or as Q says, the Great Awakening. Is it not written in QMap.pub on Q drop 666 to follow the light? In May of 2019, Trump tweeted, "This is a bright new age, the age of enlightenment," which Q post 144 is specific to point out. In the early days, decoding Q posts became a way of life for anons watching the boards. People initially believed everything was happening live. It wasn't until the first or second year they realized the Q drops were actually prophetic. Entire websites are dedicated to these correspondences and any other confirmation called Q proofs. Future proofs past. Here's an example of how the Q movement positions itself in a prophetic style. Q drop 4389 on June 3rd of 2020 says, "Dark to light," and references or fulfills drop 1440 from 3 years prior. The Light World Order is ultimately promising freedom. Freedom from the cabal, from the dark, from the occult, from the pedocracy, from the media, illegal taxation, and so on. But this is not freedom from the brothermanic slavery system. It is the culmination of it. Indeed, the future proves past. As I discussed the history of revolving back to the Golden Age in an Inconvenient History, this plan of freedom from the cabal has been the plan at the highest levels since the beginning. I'm sorry, but I see this movement in line with the forms of light worship discussed in Part 1, as well as the false prophets described in the Bible, specifically sent to deceive the elect, the ones believing in Jesus and God. The cabal, or the dark, has many coordinated attempts to discredit Q, but as Q post 4348 from May 29th of 2020 says, "Fear, panic, loss of narrative control, you are the news now." The mental transmutation is reaching completion. The Q drop links to this article about an online, quote, church that studied Q with Bible prophecies, which says, "Inside the first church of QAnon, where Jesus helps fight the deep state." Yet as I just showed, Jesus is nowhere to be found in this picture. This article was written as a hit piece by known disinfo agent Mike Rothschild. However, the church mentioned in this article does believe Q is helping Jesus fulfill prophecy. Well, a 35,000-year-old entity named Ramtha also believes Q is here to save humanity.
This beautiful smile lit up the whole room, and he said, "I am Ramtha the Enlightened One." He said, "I have come to make you a light to the world. I am a teacher and a god. I am a god because I experienced all of these things. And I am a teacher, not of truth, but of philosophy."
At Ramtha's School of Enlightenment, they too believe Q is ridding the world of darkness.
When we go on, we go all! Down Washington!
A popular saying in the New Age and metaphysical community is love and light. People ask for others to send love and light for troubling situations, or you might hear others use it as a greeting. But when we break down the phrase, what does love and light actually mean? The energy and vibration of love is that of creation, as opposed to hatred, which is the vibration of destruction. dark and light. Light is the energy and frequency of wisdom, whereas dark would be the frequency of ignorance. Therefore, when you are offering someone love and light, you are offering them the frequency of creation and wisdom, where the Cabal kept us in a frequency of destruction and ignorance. Q drop 3889, Q says, "Love and light, patriot." A phenomenon Q took credit for was a 17-second wave over the Earth on November 11 of 2018. A mysterious seismic wave recently shook Earth, and scientists can't explain it. Q drop 3979 is a redrop of an earlier post from April 18th of 2020 that has an anagram for CHQ, or chloroquine, linking a New Age YouTube video of a healing frequency telling you to clear your mind and heal. This image in the video is actually a representation of the sun. Sun Pharmaceuticals uses it as their logo. Not only was the video a New Age healing frequency video, but Sun Pharma manufactures hydrochloroquine and has donated 2.5 million tablets to the U.S.
And you'd be surprised at how many people are taking it, especially the frontline workers, before you catch it.
Hydroxychloroquine?
I'm taking it, hydroxychloroquine. Right now, yeah.
Those who have not kept up with the Q phenomenon are more likely to be caught up in a fear bondage loop because they still trust the media, one of the most prominent arms of the Cabal, or the Dark. One of the largest ways the Cabal communicated was via the media, TV, movies, music, entertainment, and news sites owned by the same companies who own the television stations, arms of the same conglomerate. Like an octopus. They send messages via news stories, documentaries, disinformation shows, false histories, false science, or propaganda, under the guise of entertainment. They use numbers or symbols to confirm to the esoteric listeners or watchers in the club when the story is following a particular narrative. For example, they may use the same first and last letter of a name, and numbers like 13 or 33, as well as strategically placed things like globes.
They manipulate our history books. The history books are not true. It's a lie. That's my phone. The history books are lying. You need to know that. You must know that.
The talking points remain in line if they all follow the script. The higher level media is dominated by programmed multiples carrying out orders. It's a way to make all media agree and form a well-organized reality for the viewer, whether they consciously know it or not. But things have changed a little.
But again, I think people felt like the Supreme Court made the decision here in Wisconsin that it was time to open up. But you can see, here, just around. Nobody's wearing them. Nobody's, there you go, including the cameraman. Yeah. Katie?
There is now an opposing side to this once unquestioned power source of the media. One of the first things that the Trump administration did was gaslight the media. This has never happened before. Almost every president prior to Trump was in coordination with the media, so the media was mostly on their side. Q spent years teaching the keyboard warriors to learn their comms, or the military communications. They communicate differently than the Cabal, and the Cabal has a hard time controlling the narrative since Trump was inaugurated. Like holes in a canoe they're just trying to plug up before the boat fills with water. But past presidents communicated to the people via the media. Trump communicates with the people through Q and Twitter.
There's nothing I'd rather do than get rid of my whole Twitter account, but I'm able to get to, I guess, 186 million people when you add up all the different accounts and add Facebook and Instagram. It's a lot of people, and that's more than the media companies have, frankly, by a lot. So I'm able to refute fake news, and that's very important.
The internet is the chosen arm of communication for the light side, or the alliance at the moment. Memes are a successful way the light has communicated. The Cabal's AIs can't read images yet, and the light side has used this to their advantage. Q encouraged their followers to learn their comms of the light side, especially through making memes. Without this interconnectivity, availability of devices, popularity of social media, and everyone worldwide being connected in one way or another, this entire internet war would be impossible. It's a slow game, and Trump is playing his role on the surface, above, but those who have kept up with Q see what's going on below, or what's hidden. Trump appeals to the exoteric while Q is esoteric. There are layers to this operation, and it can be very confusing for those who have not been keeping up. What's even more occult about all of this occultism is their use of something called mental transmutation. Some might call it the Great Awakening, but I'm arguing there's nothing great about this. And many don't understand the occult to know They're stuck in a rip current of occultism that will do nothing but bring them down. So what is mental transmutation? It's another Hermetic principle found in the Kybalion. One of the foundational beliefs is that the universe is a mental creation, which is why magical systems like the Kabbalah are such a big deal to occultists. These Luciferians use magic, or the mind, along with demonic influences to effect change. Mental transmutation means the art of transforming or changing the condition, quality, or nature of the mind from one condition to another. There are 2 steps involved in mental transmutation: awareness and inversion. In order to transmute negative mental states into positive states, you must first be aware that you're experiencing a negative state. Hey guys, we're stuck in a pedocracy. Oh, and in the US, taxation is illegal. And you know what else? The news is fake. And if history is just yesterday's news, well then, Q has made the world aware of this negative state. The dark.
All I have are negative thoughts.
The second step is to polarize that state to the opposite state. Since you've correctly identified the negative, you now should know the positive. Drain the swamp, end the Fed, that sort of thing. The Hebrew meanings for the letter Q are sun, revolution, circle, and horizon. The Q pictograph most likely means sun at the horizon. The sun brings the world from dark to light. Truth shines light. Light saves humanity. As we've explored in this series, that is too vague. The light does not equate to the living God. According to the book Ancient Mystic Oriental Brothermanry, in speculative brothermanry there is an advancement from a lower to a higher state, from darkness to light, from death to life, from error to truth. I hope you see now that these are poles, part of the same monster. Q plays the role of the light pole, exposing the darkness, the other side of the pole, or the sun ridding the world of that darkness, changing lead to gold. But do you see how these two can never be separated? And that God has no place within them at all? God has no pole. He is entirely outside of that system. Q is never once on the boards referred to Jesus in a single Q drop. They only refer to God. The closest reference was in Q drop 3707, which says, "Merry Christmas, Anons, patriots worldwide." And Q responds, "Nothing should ever replace Christ and Christmas." And God is on our side. We already discussed the light worship of Christmas in part 1, but I also did in my video literally titled "Take Christ Out of Christmas." Exchanging Jesus Christ for the sun, or an idea, a consciousness, is New Age Luciferianism, or a part of mystic Christianity. If it's true that some that follow Q believe that by awakening humanity, a changed or raised consciousness is what is going to rid the world of evil, we are the saviors of mankind, then it's not the Christ of the Bible doing it. It's Christ consciousness. Instead, they only refer to God, partially quote verses, and remove the parts that reference Jesus. Q drop 4249 in particular bothered me for omitting Jesus. It's one thing to promise so many people vengeance and judgment on the wicked, but that role belongs to Jesus. John 5:22 through 23 says it best. "For the Father, or God, judges no one, but has given all judgment to the Son, Jesus, that all may honor the Son just as they honor the Father. Whoever does not honor the Son does not honor the Father who sent him." Q does not honor the Son. Q meets the definition of a Lucifer, and Q makes false promises for the future. Where's Jesus? Why should we ever put our trust or faith in something other than him? Especially when he warns us of exactly this type of deception, something looking like the Lamb, like him, but speaking like the dragon, a Lucifer. The dark side gave us a false past, one of evolution and false history. The light side gives us a false future, one of justice or ascension or world peace. Without Jesus Christ, of course. No one has escaped being initiated into this mystery religion of the light, unless they have been saved from this mind game by the living God. So back to the bigger picture, the religion of the light. In 1957, Alice Bailey wrote in The Externalization of the Hierarchy, quote, "The three main channels through which the preparation for the New Age is going on might be regarded as the church, the brothermanic fraternity, and the educational field." She goes on to say, "There is no question, therefore, that the work to be done in familiarizing the general public with the nature of the mysteries is of paramount importance at this time." Remember that this was a work written in 1957. Now, in 2020, those who aren't controlled through religions or brothermanic ideas have been through the education system and society as a whole. The only people unwelcome in this religion of the light are those who believe in the one true light, the light of the world. Again, Jesus spoke to them, saying, "I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." John 8:12. Jesus is the light of life. Gadrael has the light of death. Jesus is truth, and Gadrael is a liar. Jesus told the truth from the beginning, and Gadrael lied from the beginning. These religions that worship Gadrael's light are anti-Jesus or anti-Christ at the core. They can hide behind whatever shiny veneer they snow the masses or their initiates with. The residual hate from the fallen will always remain. Isaiah 5:20 warns those who exchange God for the false light of Gadrael. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter, which also means truth for lies, or lies for truth. Jesus will not coexist with any other so-called God. The light of Gadrael and the true light of Jesus are not and will never be the same. The difference boils down to this. From whom do you seek your knowledge, your salvation? Gadrael or God? Indeed, Luciferianism exchanges the truth for lies by exchanging God for light. Romans 1:22-25 describes Gadrael's Luciferian religion. Claiming to be wise, they became fools, and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man, and birds, and animals, and creeping things. This is what we discussed in part 2 of this mind game series. Therefore God gave them up in their lusts of their heart to impurity, to the dishonoring of their bodies among themselves, because they exchanged the truth about God for a lie, and worshipped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. These false gods can be found across every continent in history, and up to the present day. The exchange of worship and reverence for the Creator has been replaced with worship of the creation, and ultimately the worship of the self, or that by learning this secret knowledge ye shall be as gods. The New Age, or more accurately the Ancient Age, is a universal religion welcoming everyone who worships the light, and only excludes those who believe in the truth of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. The Buddhists, the Hindus, the Sikhs, humanists, scientismists, Muslims, witches, shamans, atonists, secular New Agers, atheists, anyone who rejects Jesus as their God and personal Savior. All of these paths are unified by a common purpose: the glorification of man, the oldest lie in the book, or men becoming gods. New Age writer William Thompson states, "The new spirituality does not reject the earlier patterns of the great universal religions. Priests and church will not disappear. They will not be forced out of existence in the New Age. They will be absorbed into the existence of the New Age." Based upon history and all humanity has gone through up until today, looking at it as a whole, what if we already have a universal religion? We see variations of it everywhere in all religions. Follow the light, love and light, dark to light, yet this light is Gadrael. Maybe there will never be a brand new worldwide religion, because it would ultimately still worship the light in any one of his forms, and essentially is no different than what we already have today. At the core, a universal religion of light worship. Lucifer, Satan, Gadrael, I don't think he cares what you call him or what religion you belong to, as long as you worship him knowingly or unknowingly. Again, he won't divide his own kingdom, especially when it's working so well. In this mind game, there are two choices: the truth or Luciferianism. The idea of light has been misused for millennia. John wrote that Jesus is the true light that gives light to everyone. All Jesus said and did was for all people. He didn't tell his apostles to start a secret society or a special rabbinic group to keep the information hidden. Jesus warned any society doing just that in Luke 12:2-3. In the meantime, when so many thousands of people had gathered together that they were trampling one another, he began to say to his disciples first, "Beware of the leaven of the Pharisees, which is hypocrisy. Nothing is covered that will not be revealed, or hidden that will not be known. Therefore, whatever you have said in the dark shall be heard in the light, and what you have whispered in private rooms shall be proclaimed on the housetops." Here Jesus talks about what the Pharisees did in secret, which was teach the philosophy of ancient Kabbalah and oral tradition, which later became the Zohar and the Talmud. Secret societies and hidden knowledge are incompatible with the teachings of Jesus. It's the end of this series, and I hope I've been clear on why I believe Luciferianism is incompatible with the truth. We align our beliefs with the power we find unity of trait, or unity of purpose with. Lucifer's kingdom appeals to the human traits in all of us, striving for freedom or power, and our inherent selfishness. Like a friend, God lets us make mistakes and grow from our struggles like a parent, giving us the freedom to choose our own paths, but not being free of the consequences. The way God wants us to live has nothing to do with control or dominance. It's a guide for what is best for us overall. A victor is never made without struggle. And the Bible is clear that if you choose to follow Him, to truly follow Him, you will be hated by the world and face many hardships, many tribulations. Many are not prepared to fight that battle. It's easier to stay with your old pal, the old serpent. Luke 6:26 says, "Woe to you when old people speak well of you, for so their fathers did to the false prophets." God demonstrates His purpose and traits countless times, not only in Scripture, but every day. With so many organizations conspiring against humanity, it is a miracle that any of us have survived at all. The sun always rises and the moon always shines. Flowers still bloom, crops still come forth, the seasons still change. The oceans stay in their lane, and He shows us unconditional love. And yet we take it for granted. Jesus even continued to focus on others as He died on the cross, to forgive us, instead of saving Himself. The fallen angels and their demons do not display friendliness, unconditional love, and freedom. This is evident in the positions Gadrael has placed His select few in. Humanity is subjugated through mind control, positions of power, wars, power struggles, money, greed, forced labor, false hope, and essentially is living through hell on earth. Jesus created the way out. God has already won this war, and Gadrael knows that His time is up. John 16:33 says, "I have said these things to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but take heart, I have overcome the world." Why didn't God just stop the fallen, one may ask? Because they have free will, and if they didn't have free will, neither would you. God does not have programmed slaves. Many falsely blame the one true Creator for the strife and grief produced in this mind game, but the current reality is the product of a world devoid of godliness. The ones who have left the Luciferian light traps I talked about in the first part of the series, and follow the one true God, not the spectacle of Luciferianism in its many forms. Like ice cream, there are many flavors, but the base is the same. The ones who have left have felt and seen this freedom firsthand. It's not easy, but it's better to walk alone in the truth than be safe in the crowd of lies. Had the all-knowing God stopped Gadrael from acting on his own free will, He could also stop anyone, anywhere, from having their own autonomy. That's a dictator. We all have free will to choose what we do in the time we are given here. We have no control over being born and very little control over when we die. What we do in the meantime is what matters. Every day we're alive, we choose what is important to us, what we worship, whether that be making choices to get closer to God or further away. 1 John 2:15 says, "Do not love the world, or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him." To say the dark is evil and of the devil, and light is good and of God, is saying God is part evil. The force energy is entirely Gadrael. It's time to choose a side. As this entire series has explored, making the choice to follow the light, whether it be in the form of Lucifer, Satan, the dark, or the false light, is choosing to follow the ways of the world, to ultimately follow Gadrael, the liar from the beginning. So choose your side wisely. Jesus comes as a thief in the night.
People inherently